Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of Reddit Podcast Stories, where today I poured coffee all over Karen's car in the drive-thru, then got her arrested. I, 19 female, quit my crappy job at McDonald's recently and remembered this story. We had these regulars that would come through the drive-thru nearly every other day, and I was always the one handing them their food out the window. They were an older couple with awful attitudes. For context, my branch of the restaurant was one of 5 in my town, but the rest were about 20 minutes away. We were the worst rated because we were small and extremely busy as a result, and we were run by literal teenagers half the time. Lunch and dinner rushes were a mess as managers were more concerned with stats than actually running the place well. This couple would come through at our busiest time, order the same thing, shouting at the order taker, payment window, and me for how slow we were. Our small kitchen was unable to accommodate how busy we got, so wait times were often 300 seconds. It's supposed to be 120 or less. Every time they'd yell at me for how busy we were, how slow, how their food would be cold, how it wasn't fair to make an old couple wait, and every time the woman would ask for extra cream on her latte, and if she didn't get it, she would become irate. I would do it for her because I had learned to take the bullet for taking too long rather than dealing with this jerk. On this day, back when I was around 16 or 17, we were flat out busy, 600 plus second wait, when the cream couple arrived. I asked them to pull into a bay and we would bring their food out so that we could serve the next customers, whose order was prepared. She went ballistic on me, refusing to move, shouting at me, slamming her hands on the dashboard, classic temper tantrum and refusing to move. This went on for so long, I started explaining to my manager the issue, who doesn't take that kind of crap, and she called the police to remove this woman. This is usually enough of a threat to get the customer to go, but not this time. She said something along the lines of, "Every time I come here, you have to wait, and my cream melts. And every time we come here, you're working. You are an awful person." I'm not the kind of person to take crap from people. You get the energy you give, but up until now, I had been forgiving. So I blurted out while she was yelling at me, "So? Go somewhere else then. It's called problem solving." She was stunned before lashing out again, explaining this place was her only option and there was no way I could make her go somewhere else. So I said, "Want a bet?" Latte and extra cream in hand, I poured the coffee all over the roof and the window of her car. I then asked her again to pull around and her order would be ready soon, and I slammed the window. I then promptly burst into tears out of exhaustion and hate and began making my way to my manager to tell her of my crime. The police turned up basically straight after. We explained what was going on while Cream Karen was trying to open the window. They asked her to go and explained she was now trespassing if she didn't go. Long story short, next thing I know, I saw this 70-plus-year-old woman swinging at the cop before quickly getting put into the cop car, leaving her very frail husband still sat in his car without his latte. Did this woman deserve to get arrested? Probably not. Was it appropriate for me to pour coffee on her car? Maybe not. You decide if I'm the jerk. Either way, it felt good. Plus, I didn't lose my job. Here's some more crappy things this woman would do. She would throw a temper tantrum if we were too busy to top up her extra cream. If there wasn't enough cream, we would have to remake the drink. The coffee machines would take 2 minutes to pour sometimes, and would then complain about how long the order took. Often, she would ask me to add like 5 packets of sugar to her pre-syrup latte, which I would happily accommodate for if we weren't busy, but also remind her that there were 3 pumps of syrup in there already. She would then complain it was too sweet and accused me several times of adding more sugar than she asked for. Am I the jerk for sacrificing my daughter's college fund because her sister just gave birth to her 4th baby? I'm 48 female. My older daughter, who's 24, gave birth to her 4th kid 6 months ago. She used to work as a dishwasher, but due to health issues stemming from her 2nd kid, chronic back pain, and then her 3rd, after effects of broken tailbone and more chronic pain that made standing and moving around hard, she can no longer work now. She tried her best, getting an office temp job, but after about a week, the woman supervising her said, "This isn't working out." She was a very uptight woman who claims that just because it always took her 3 days max to train everybody else to the data entry work, that she can't just be a good person and accommodate slower learners. That woman likely caused her to get a bad reputation at the temp agency, and she didn't get hired anywhere else. My daughter's boyfriend, who's 28, works at Walmart. He had much more hours when she was pregnant, but since then his hours have ebbed and flowed. He said he will take a day in the future to look for jobs, but it's the holidays and he's busy with family right now. I feel a lot of empathy for my daughter and her boyfriend, and I wish I could help them out more, but I myself am a single mom working for a nursing home where I struggle to get full-time hours, and my ex ran up a lot of debt in both our names and is now living in another country. My younger daughter, who's 17, has a college fund. The amount in it would be enough to pay for a large amount of a 2-year community college, given the scholarships and grants she would likely get. She's applied to 4-year universities with the understanding that she'd be taking out loans and working, so she's deciding between 4 years and community college. The other shoe dropped after my older daughter's landlord found out that they were having her boyfriend's brother and girlfriend living in their 1-bedroom in exchange for them helping with the rent, and they got evicted. My daughter agrees it was wrong to lie to the landlord, and both parents are depressed because her boyfriend got a job offer 1 state away and they would have to move from their support network. They came to me asking for help so they could have more time to find financial stability here. I was torn, but seeing my grandkids, I knew my duty was to care for the most vulnerable in the family. So I will be making calls to liquidate my daughter's college fund. Oh no, come on. Liquidate my daughter's college fund, saying yes to understanding the penalties, and told my daughter this. She got very cold and said, "You always brag about having a good memory. I hope you remember this moment." She has not spoken to me since. Made some cryptic posts about how she hopes she'll be grateful one day that she won't have the privilege of studying anything outside of something technical because she needs something where she'll always be able to find a job. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. Your older daughter is immature and so is her boyfriend. So you turn around and support their bad decisions at the expense of your younger daughter? People who have 4 kids don't have the luxury of dipping out of employment when they feel like it, especially during the holiday season. You're penalizing the highly functioning minor daughter for other adults' selfish and foolish choices. You're the jerk. So your oldest daughter could barely afford 3 kids, has chronic pain, no job, and decided to have a 4th kid too. And then you thought the best solution was to upset your other daughter and ruin her future? When there was an option of them moving so they could get more money. Of course you're the jerk. You're the jerk. With that one action, you sacrificed your relationship with your youngest daughter. Poor thing. Tell your older daughter's boyfriend to get a vasectomy for the holiday season. Yeah, he kinda needs one, doesn't he? I'm finding out my girlfriend of 1 year is deaf as I'm on the bus on my way to meet her for the first time. Holy cow, I'm trembling. Still 6 hours until I make it there. I need to let it out somewhere. I, female 20, met her, female 21, in a match of League of Legends 2 years ago. We talked a lot, became really close, and basically started dating 1 year ago. We send each other pictures all the time and videos as well, so I never understood her apprehension to FaceTime me. We tell each other everything, and I mean everything. She's presented me her parents, and I know all her family. Today I was going to surprise her by visiting for the first time. I talked with her sister to make sure it was okay. Less than 30 minutes ago, I get a text from her, and I'm copy and pasting what happened. "Hey love, you are so sweet and beautiful, and you deserve so much better. I know you are coming because S told me. I'm sorry to ruin your surprise. It's just, I'd hate to see your face when you find out. I know we promised to always be truthful, but I've been lying to you all this time." That was her first paragraph, and I was so worried because I thought she was breaking up with me. But then she continued, "You are too caring to ask why I never speak, why I never sent you a voice note. You're just too perfect, and there's no way you'd be with me if you knew. The reason is very simple. I was born deaf. I'm sorry you have to find out this way. I'm just a coward for not telling you sooner. I'll understand if you don't want to be with me anymore." Holy cow, I was expecting something totally different, and now I'm scared because I've never even interacted with a deaf person before, and I want to make sure she gets that I love her either way. I'm still in disbelief that she thought it would be a deal breaker for me. Update. So I'm back at my house now, and I'm still processing everything that just happened. I texted her I was outside, and my hands were shaking. I had no idea what to do. I asked her if she can read lips, and she said very little. When she opened the door, her eyes already had tears in them, and when she saw me, she broke down crying, and I started crying as well. I stopped thinking and just hugged her. I started speaking soothing words until I realized it was useless. After we both calmed down, we went to our room and started typing in our cell phones to talk to each other. At the beginning, it was kind of awkward, but after a while, it was pretty chill. We cuddled a lot, watched a lot of movies, and kissed a lot. It was a really beautiful day. There were some mistakes from my side. Out of the blue, I'd start speaking to her until I saw her confused face. I called her by her name when I was searching for her and tried to show her funny TikToks. The funny part being the audio. Yeah, I'm stupid, I know. But overall, it was an amazing day. She is more perfect than I could ever imagine. Thank you for all the words of support. I appreciate you guys. Update. It's been almost 3 weeks since we met in real life. She stayed last weekend at my place and we had a great time. But every time I wanted to say something, but I couldn't and had to type it, I felt frustration and anger. Because just now it's hitting me that she could have told me this, just like y'all said, and I'd already know at least a little bit of sign. It angers me because she knows how I am. She knows me better than anyone, and still she thought I wouldn't love her. I know it's more of a me issue, but I still can't help feeling sad. I don't want this to ruin our relationship, and I know I have to talk to her, but I guess I'm not ready yet. For those of you that say it was never real because we never saw each other are wrong. I never said we didn't send each other pictures or videos. She sent me a lot of videos of her doing stuff, but just never speaking. I did the same, but I spoke a lot in my videos. So yeah, call our relationship fake if you want. Only we know what we have. Update. We talked. I wrote what I was feeling and thinking. She completely understood what I felt and where it was coming from. She apologized profusely. She already has done that a couple of times and told me it was okay if I break up with her. We talked for hours about honesty and communication, and we both put our cards on the table. At the end, I told her I still love her, and she told me the same. We cried, laughed, and hugged each other. It was tough for a few moments, but I think the worst part is already over. I'm already looking for sign language classes, and I know the alphabet. I'm sure this whole thing has helped to strengthen our relationship. Thank you for all the advice. I appreciate it. Have a good day. Am I the jerk for throwing the fact that my adoptive mom is not biologically related to my daughter in her face? Backstory. My dad passed when I was 9 and my mom when I was 15. After my mom passed, my godmother adopted me. She calls herself and her husband my mom and dad. I call them mom and dad to strangers who don't know the story, but to them and friends, I call them by their name. They will be called Linda and Bob for this story. We generally get along and we don't typically have issues. Now for the story. My husband, 26 male, and I, 25 female, had our first baby 5 months ago. We're pretty lax first-time parents in my opinion. We've let people hold her as long as they've washed their hands since she was born. We've drawn a hard line and we don't let anybody kiss her though. We've had issues with Linda, 62 female, not respecting that. She's constantly trying to kiss her cheeks. I've told her time and time again that this is not acceptable and I don't want my kid getting sick. I've shown her videos of other babies with RSV and other sicknesses. She always agrees and says she won't do it anymore. My daughter and I went to her house for lunch this last Sunday, and while she was holding my daughter, I went to the restroom. While I was in there, I heard Bob gasp and say Linda's name. When I came out and asked what happened, Linda gave Bob the look of, "You better keep your mouth shut." Bob immediately tells me that Linda had kissed her. I snatched my baby back and started loading her into the car seat to leave. Linda starts trying to get me to stay, saying we haven't eaten yet, etc. I refused to stay, and I told her she won't be holding my daughter for a long time. She then says, "It's just a kiss from Grammy. It's not going to hurt anything." I start yelling, "It's not a Grammy kiss, it's a stranger kiss. You're not related to her. You share nothing biologically with her." And I stormed out of the house. My husband says I'm not wrong, but I could have been nicer about it. I called Bob, and he says Linda deserved it, and it was the only way she'd stop. All my friends, though, say I was being too mean, and I should have left without pointing out that she's not really related. Edit. Okay, I'm the jerk. I will go and apologize to her tomorrow after work. As many of you have pointed out, there is more to our relationship than what is shown here. There was never any mistreatment, but I was the walking trophy of her being a good person and adopting an orphan. I had to look a certain way, act a certain way, and maintain a certain image to make sure that I looked saved. I always did what was asked, no questions, because I owed her. After I moved out, we had lunch once a month until I became pregnant. She's been highly involved since then. Bob is a saint and I'd do anything for him. We've had breakfast every Sunday morning since I moved out. I have never viewed Linda as a mom, but I do view Bob as a dad. Everyone sucks here except Bob. She's completely ignoring your wishes. But the punishment does not fit the crime. Whether or not she's your biological mom has nothing to do with her breaking your rules. Everyone sucks here. Grammy needs to learn how to respect your boundaries. Your comment to her about not being biologically related was unnecessary. I'm 40 female. Why does my boyfriend, who's 50, act funny in stores, and how do I get him to knock it off? Every time we go shopping, he acts so weird. Here are some examples. 1. He will whisper in stores, but whenever I talk to him in a normal voice, he keeps saying, "What?" And I keep having to repeat myself and raise my voice in order for him to hear me. 2. He will stand there and watch me shop. He won't browse for or pick anything out for himself. He just follows me around and watches me while I browse and shop. If I attempt to follow him, he won't move. He'll just stand there and say, "I'm following you." 3. He acts annoyed whenever I pick something out, even if I'm spending my own money. Once I put a $3 hair clip on the checkout stand and he made a face and said, "Really?" And I was like, "What's the problem? It's a $3 hair clip. I need a clip and it's my money." And he was like, "I'm just surprised you would get that." And I was like, "Why? I have lots of hair and I need a clip. What's the problem?" And he said nothing, there's no problem. But the vibe said otherwise. 4. He will be very nice to the checkout person if they are younger and attractive. Otherwise, he won't make conversation with them and will ignore their questions and will claim it's because he has trouble hearing them. But he never has this problem when the cashier looks like Jennifer Aniston. He has no opinions in the store. If I ask him if he wants the regular or spicy barbecue sauce, he won't answer. First, he'll act like he can't hear me. Then after we do the me raising my voice and him recoiling dance, he'll shrug his shoulders and whisper, "Whichever you like," very meekly. It's bizarre. If I ask him at home, he'll say clearly in a normal voice, "I prefer the non-spicy." But in the store, he acts like Mr. Meek with zero opinions or preferences. It's only in the store that he acts this way. 6. He wears a resting jerk face the whole time in the store. 7. He acts like he's doing me a favor by going shopping with me. He won't carry on a conversation with me in the store either. If I try to tell him about my day, he'll just act annoyed, like he's not really listening and like I'm stressing him out by talking. I often get compliments from other women on my outfits, and he makes a grimace face when this happens. And he acts completely nice and normal and speaks normally at home and in the car. What's going on? He denies that he acts any differently in stores. Why is he doing this, and how do I get him to stop? Would there be a way for me to convince him to talk and act like a normal adult while he's in stores? Or do I just refuse to go shopping with him anymore? I'd rather be single than put up with this. He's doing this on purpose. He wants to not only appear single when he goes out with you, but also goes out of his way to treat you badly, and especially in the event of someone else boosting your confidence. $10 and a bag of cherries, he's gonna cheat if you stay and someone gives him the opportunity to. Why are you dating this guy? You do know you're not supposed to date jerks, right? You're too grown for this. Sounds like he doesn't like shopping or gets some sort of anxiety while in the store. You can't change him. Anxiety doesn't make you act like a total jerk to everyone except people you think are hot. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her boyfriend? Please let us know. I think he has hearing loss, some social anxiety, and hates being in stores. I uncovered a major lie my partner told me while at his hospital bedside. I met my boyfriend summer of 2015. We were smitten, and a few months later we began officially dating. Education is really important in my family. I have a bachelor's degree, and I am the least educated. My boyfriend has a few credits, but that's it. I always overlooked this as he enlisted in the Army after high school. Our relationship has had its ups and downs. Trust has always been a struggle. He has told a lot of lies. There are many examples, some big, some small. Just know I decided to forgive him every time. He's mostly been a good and loving partner. He's my best friend, and we have built a life together. He has been very sick. The Sunday before Thanksgiving, I noticed his eyes looked a bit yellow. He told me he felt fine. He was just tired, and he didn't think they looked yellow. Some of his meds have been causing mood swings, and he's been getting really defensive while talking about his health, so I dropped it. Thanksgiving came. My family are doctors, all of them. My sister specializes in GI stuff. At one point, they asked me if I had noticed his color. We discussed how something needed to be done. We weren't doing his family stuff specifically because he wanted a day where he didn't have to answer questions about his health. I talked to him privately about how my sister and brother-in-law wanted to talk with us about it when we saw them on Saturday, and he agreed. Saturday, he's yellow. We had been talking about getting him to a GI doc. Now we were talking about going to the ER. He got overwhelmed, and we compromised on him getting to sleep at home and us going first thing in the morning. So my sister and mom came by to pick us up first thing in the morning. We discussed which hospital would be best. My boyfriend's health insurance through work may or may not be in effect, a whole nother story, so we're thinking VA. He got overwhelmed and said he didn't want to go there for reasons like the quality of care and long waits. My sister said there is a chance we would end up getting sent to a bigger hospital in our area anyways, so we went there. We still don't know what's going on, but he's very unwell. My family is concerned that his family doesn't fully understand the severity and get on me to make sure they come by to see him for themselves. So his mom and stepdad came by. I think I was successful, but we just made small talk mostly. His nurse came in to say that she got him off his liquid diet, and when the tray came in, they left. He had one bite and started throwing up. I went out to ask the nurse what we needed to do with the vomit bag. His mom and stepdad are at the station getting put on the list to be notified of everything. We start talking about the insurance thing. I told them I planned on being with him all day tomorrow so I could figure stuff out, that I haven't even started looking into programs that can assist veterans like this. They stop me and ask what I'm talking about. He's not a veteran. I'm very confused, and it becomes obvious to all of us what has happened. They asked me to not say anything about it yet. If it weren't for trust being such a big thing in our history, I may have waited, but I last 2 minutes before I asked. He immediately told the truth and began answering my questions. We talked for a few hours. During the nurse shift change, I asked if they could give him something for anxiety and left after they did. Having that conversation with him yellow in a hospital bed was surreal. I think I'm most upset that by saying a stupid lie when we met to impress me has led to almost a decade of him lying to my family and friends. He wants to tell them, but I don't think I can keep this secret long. They are all full steam ahead to help him and are leaning into VA benefits. I can't lie for him, but I also want him focused on his health. I don't want to lose him, but I don't know if he's lost me. I want our life together, but I want to never see him again. I'm afraid of life without him in both versions. Do I tell them, or do I wait until he's more stable? Do I stay with him, or is it insane I'm even considering it? You need to tell them immediately. While this is a pride issue to him and will absolutely ruin his reputation in your family, there's also a massive issue now if they've been going down the care route trying to find doctors that will take his insurance. This will dramatically change his care plan. He won't be eligible with the VA. Call the insurance phone number on the back of his insurance card and work through whether he even has insurance right now with them. If he does, find out what plan network he's in. Good luck. What an awful situation. He needs treatment right now. But you need it too. Why is your self-esteem so low that you spend 8 years of your life with someone who lies to you all the time? It's not a small lie. It's not justifiable in any way. Help him while he's in the hospital. But once he's home, you need to get out of this relationship. He's a grown man. He's got family. He figured out his insurance by himself. Just go and never look back. Am I the jerk for deciding to quietly change my will without telling my wife? Me, 34 male, and my wife, who's 32, just had our first baby today. We were in the delivery room and all was going well. I was holding her hand, trying my best to be supportive. She was in pre-labor and was experiencing irregular contractions that she said weren't painful yet. I told her how much I loved her and that she was doing great, but made sure not to talk too much either. All of a sudden, my wife tells me, "Please get out." I ask her what happened, and she says she just doesn't want me there right now. I stand there in surprise for several seconds, after which the midwife tells me to get out or she'll call security. I felt humiliated. Not only was I banned abruptly from watching my child's birth, but it was under the threat of force. Throughout our marriage, I've suspected that my wife wouldn't be with me if it wasn't for my job and family background. Her eyes don't light up when I come home from work. I start our long hugs and she ends them early. Her eyes wander when I'm talking to her. I don't think she loves me nearly as much as I love her. I'm not accusing her of being a gold digger. She may love me on some level, but I don't know that she has ever been in love with me. If I died tomorrow, I don't know if it would take her very long to move on. I live in a state where the right to an elective share is 25% of separate property. We don't have a prenup, so this means that my wife has a right to at least 25% of my separate property if I die, even if I were to disinherit her in my will. I've decided to will her 30% of my separate property. It was previously 100%, and 100% of our communal property if I die. The rest of my separate property, including income-producing assets and heirlooms, goes to my kids and other family members. Am I the jerk? You should read up on stages and phases of labor, specifically transitioning to stage 2 of labor. This is a common reaction moms have, and it's due to an abundance of hormones and emotions, and maybe consider speaking to your wife about how you've been feeling. It's understandable you were upset and hurt that she threw you out of the delivery room, but clearly your marriage already has issues if you jump from that to changing your will the same day. You two need to have a heart-to-heart conversation. Do note, though, that your wife didn't threaten to remove you by force. That was the midwife. And without more info, it's hard to assess her feelings. All those things you described are things both my husband and I have done to each other at some point. Eyes wandering, not in the mood for a long hug, etc. It doesn't mean we don't love each other, just that we're not always in the mood to show it. Amazing that OP has the mental bandwidth to be strategizing like this on the actual day his first baby was born. Extremely petty and self-absorbed. Makes me wonder if he's on a completely different planet than his wife in general. Sounds like she was well within her right to demand space from him so she could focus on birthing a human. Yikes. Not the jerk. Pregnant-splaining at its finest. Out and about again today. But hormones and embarrassment. Goodness gracious. Change your will as you see fit, regardless of the reason. It's your crap. Do with it what you want. Would you like to have a whole room of people watching you push out a kidney stone? 'Cause I sure wouldn't. Awesome comparison. Didn't think someone could come up with anything so stupid, but Reddit never lets me down. Not the jerk. I'd paternity test the kid though. I'm guessing she had a panic moment that it might show it's not yours. Our OBGYN told us of the multiple occasions a husband was asked to leave to be sure the baby was the right race for the couple. My Karen stepdaughter goes to jail and my wife demands I go bail her out at 3 a.m. in the morning. Not gonna happen. My wife, who's 40, has a 19-year-old daughter, Meg, that's starting her second year of college. Meg attends a state school that's about a 4-hour drive from where we live. She started classes about 2 weeks ago. Meg has taken out loans to pay for her college and lives on campus, so she has no rent and has access to food on campus. She worked all summer, so she has a fair amount of money on her own, but we still provide her with $100 a month to help her out. This past weekend, my wife got a call from Meg at 3 a.m. Every parent's worst nightmare because no call at that time is good news. Thankfully, Meg was okay, but she had gotten arrested. Apparently, she had been in a party with friends and got drunk. She walked home with a group, but split off with a couple other friends at some point. This smaller group walked up to what they thought was one of their friends' houses, but it wasn't. The people who lived there did not appreciate the doorbell ringing at 2 a.m. and called the police instead of opening the door. When the cops showed up, Meg and the others ran. Meg got caught and was arrested. She called us from jail and wanted us to come bail her out. My wife practically jumped out of bed and started to get ready. I asked her what she was doing, and she said that we have to go get Meg right now. I told her it's 3 a.m. and a 4-hour drive. If I'm going to be driving that far, I need to get some more sleep first. My wife ripped the blankets off the bed and told me we need to leave now. I got up and reminded her that there are 2 other kids in this house, stepson who's 16 and our son who's 9, that we need to talk to before we leave, and I don't want to wake them up at 4 a.m. to tell them we're leaving. I also reminded her that due to her health issues, I'm guessing she wants me to drive since it's dark out. I told her that she either lets me sleep until at least 7 a.m. or she leaves now and drives herself. I told her that Meg is safe, even though she's probably scared and uncomfortable, but that maybe she needs to feel that way right now. She tried to argue with me, but I told her that I'm not going to fight about this, so she either leaves now or lets me sleep. Thankfully, she let me get some more sleep, but woke me up right at 7 a.m. and told me to get in the car. She apparently hadn't slept and had already told the other kids what had happened, and that we had to leave but would be back later in the day. The entire drive, my wife made comments about how scared Meg must have been and how we should have left earlier, etc. I kept trying to tell her that Meg will be fine, even if she's a little shaken up by this. Then my wife told me that if this was my son instead of Meg, I would have jumped out of bed just like she did. This upset me because I would have done the same thing for my son that I'm doing for Meg. You get arrested at 3 a.m. and want us to bail you out, you're waiting until I'm darn well ready to come get you. But my wife thinks that me sleeping instead of leaving right away was a jerk move. Not the jerk. Actions have consequences, and Stepdaughter is learning that now. You did the right thing. Not the jerk. Staying a couple extra hours in jail while she sobers up might be a good wake-up call for her, and it might prevent future instances of getting drunk and doing stupid things. Not the jerk. While it's understandable that your wife was panicking and upset about her daughter being in jail, it's also reasonable for you to want to be rested before making a long drive. Safety should always come first. It sounds like you did consider Meg's well-being by stating that she was safe, even if she was uncomfortable. Getting arrested is a serious matter, and maybe it's a good life lesson for her about making better choices and understanding consequences. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. I would have left her in there a few days. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Am I the jerk for reporting a family for sending their kids to school in our district, even though they no longer live here? My kids and I moved into a new school district last year. Although we live very close to a great school, we were sent to attend another school in the district because the desired school was at capacity. I was informed right now before the school year that my 2 kids were next to be enrolled. The housing issue has slowed movers down to a near halt, and we aren't really living in an area with frequent movers anyway. I found out that a family moved out of our district to our inner city schools, but was also informed their students were still attending the school in my district. I don't know the family, but I don't blame them. The inner city schools are terrible and problematic at best. However, our district is not open enrollment, and they should no longer be attending the school. I called the principal and board of education to make a report, and I was finally informed last week that my kids will be attending our local school, and I breathed a sigh of relief. They will start next week, and this will be a huge burden lifted for our household. The issue comes from the family that needs to pull their kids from the school. They found out I made the call and informed me that while I was doing what's best for my kid, I would have a horrible impact on theirs. Apparently, one of their kids is autistic and thriving with their school. They said that he was nonverbal, but now he's telling his mom, "I love you." I felt terrible when they said that, but I also didn't make them move. They did that on their own. They've been telling people about it, and of course, they all think I'm heartless. Some have said that I'm a jerk, but I wanted to see if I mishandled it. So, am I the jerk here? Everyone sucks here. The fact that the US school system is based on zip codes is a huge problem. We fund education primarily through property taxes, so the more expensive areas have the better schools. People who can't afford houses in those areas are essentially condemned to a substandard education. So basically, the US public school system is the biggest jerk here. The other family in this situation sucks because they were breaking the law. Even if it's a law that shouldn't exist, it does, and they needed to follow it. It's my understanding that many districts will accommodate kids and families with special circumstances. At the very least, before moving, the family should have talked with the district about legal ways to keep their kids in their schools. If they needed their kids in these schools, then they needed to move within the district or find a way to get a transfer back into the district. You suck because you threw another family under the bus. I get why you did it, but it's still a jerk thing to do. Not the jerk. You moved to a home specifically for the school, which is a common thing. The people that moved out of the school district while their kids still attended were breaking the law. I get that it's hard and expensive to raise a special needs kid, but that doesn't justify breaking the law. Your kids have the right to go to that school. Their kids need to attend a school based on their address. Yeah, it might suck, but that's the way it works. Legally, not the jerk, but morally, wow. Best I'd give this is no jerks here, because neither of your families created the scenario where schools don't have the funding to run properly, and both of you were doing what was best for your families. That being said, your decision resulted in your kids going from a good school to a great school, and the other kid, who needs extra support, from a school that could provide that to one that can barely support kids without special needs. Thanks. Well, what do you think? Was OP wrong for reporting the other family or not? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for boarding the plane and leaving without my wife? My wife, who's 43, and I, male 47, have a daughter who's 21 who goes to college out of state. We will call my wife Meg and my daughter Jess. Jess is in her junior year of college. Over the summer, she was employed by our university and was able to stay in the dorms. After summer, she was moving out of the dorms and into her own apartment off campus. Meg and I live in the Pacific Northwest, and Jess goes to school on the East Coast. We usually go to visit Jess a couple of times throughout the semester, typically parents' weekend and move-out day. She also comes home during the holidays. Let me start by saying that traveling with my wife is not a great experience. I'm very type A. I like to have everything organized and make sure that we get where we need to be on time, especially when traveling. My wife is the opposite, very go with the flow and we will get there when we get there. I do my best to meet in the middle, but not when traveling by plane. Last year, during Parents' Weekend, Meg and I were going to fly out to see Jess. Our flight was at 10 a.m. Our airport isn't huge, but not a tiny airport either. I told my wife that we needed to be at the airport 90 minutes early, and we live about 30 minutes from the airport. This being said, I wanted to leave at the very latest by 8, since we would also need to park and walk a little bit. I of course got up at 6 to make sure everything was ready and accounted for. My wife does not like to get up early. It took me attempting to wake her up 5 times before she eventually got up at 7:40, then wanted to make coffee, shower, and eat a bowl of cereal. Let's just say that we didn't leave the house until 9. It ended up being busier at the airport than normal, likely due to many colleges having parents that weekend, and it took so long to get through security that we missed our flight. Rightly so, the airline refused to refund our tickets. We were able to get new tickets, but not until the next day, and missed Friday afternoon and Saturday morning with our daughter. Jess was disappointed, to say the least. Fast forward to now. We were flying down for a long weekend to help her move. We take one flight from our town to a bigger town nearby, then fly from there to my daughter's college town. Again, it was a long morning of me pushing my wife, getting her to move along. Due to the last airport mishap, I wanted to make sure I told her we needed to leave extra early as to not miss the flight again. We got there on time, with a bit of time to spare, and my wife was annoyed. Kept going on about how now we just have to sit and wait for 45 minutes for them to start boarding. We took our first flight and landed in the connecting city at a much larger airport. We only had about 1 hour layover. We got off the plane at 9:15 and our next plane started boarding at 9:40. We had to take multiple rails to get from where we landed to our terminal. We got to our terminal and had about 15 minutes until our plane was set to board. My wife tells me that she wants to get coffee. There was a little market next to our terminal that sold hot food and coffee. I asked if she wanted me to go grab it for her. "No, I want Starbucks," she said. Well, Starbucks was a real ride away and a little bit of a walk. I told her we couldn't do that. We didn't have enough time. She stated that we had enough time, and if I wouldn't go with her, she would go by herself. I tried to discourage her, but she was determined. She walked away at a brisk pace for her and said she would be back in time. 15 minutes went by and she was nowhere to be seen. They started calling boarding groups. I called my wife, hoping that she was nearby, but she didn't answer. They called a few groups, then called ours. In a panic, I called her again 3 times. Finally, on the last call, she answered and said that she was on her way. It was a long line and she had to wait a bit. I told her they were almost done with boarding and she needed to hurry up. I waited by the gate, but the attendant said they would need to shut the gate in 2 minutes. I waited and waited, but she didn't show up. The attendant asked if I wanted to board. Otherwise, she was closing the gate. I tried to plead with her to wait a couple of minutes, but she insisted that she couldn't, so I boarded the plane. A few minutes later, my wife calls me, saying that the attendant won't let her on. They had already removed the boarding ramp at that point. She told me I needed to tell them to let me off the plane to be with her, and I said no. It's not fair to do this again to Jess. I said I told you we didn't have time, but you decided to go anyways. I told her to go purchase a new ticket for the next flight, and I would see her when she arrives. She got to Jess's school and seemed unbothered by the whole situation, didn't even really talk about it. I thought maybe she realized it was her fault and just wanted to drop it. Boy, was I wrong. We're now home, and she hasn't talked to me since the trip, over a week ago, and is insisting that I'm the jerk. So, am I the jerk? Update. As far as how she acts in other situations, she generally doesn't have any issues. She's never one to be late to work or anything like that, or just seems like travel is her poor area. I never noticed things like this until we started traveling often to see our daughter. This is why I never considered ADD or ADHD. She really shows no other signs of this. I saw posts implying that my wife might have an addiction of some sort. I'm not sure how that would line up, but I don't see that being a possibility. I didn't think the following information was important, but my daughter made a comment and so did a friend that I discussed this with, so I thought maybe I would mention it here. Jess is not Meg's daughter. I was married once before, and my wife unfortunately passed due to complications during Jess's birth. I remarried Meg when my daughter was 6. My daughter made a comment that Meg doesn't want to come to see or help her, and that's why she's always running late. But I've offered to go alone, and Meg was always very against the idea, so I don't think that that's the case. Update. I can't say that Meg and Jess have had the easiest relationship. Meg always wanted to have another kid, but we were unable to conceive. She did make comments that she wanted kids of her own, and that caused a little rift in our relationship at the time, because I wanted her to see Jess as her daughter. But they really never had the typical mother-daughter relationship. It was always very much pushed that Jess was my daughter. Meg did make comments about being excited to have an empty nest, but I assumed this was just because we would have more room. Jess is a great kid and really never says anything bad about anyone, but she had made comments before stating that she thinks Meg is jealous of her, but this never made sense to me. She has also told me that she doesn't want Meg to come to her school for Parents' Weekend as she would rather spend it with just me or wait for Father's Weekend. But Meg always says she wants to go and I've never gone without her. This being said, I've never seen any negativity directed at Jess from Meg or resentment. Maybe I'm missing something. Update. My wife finally started talking to me again. When she did, I told her that I wanted to have a conversation about this situation, but I wanted to give it a couple of days for emotions to settle down. Some of the comments here gave me a great idea, and I wanted to see what she thought about it. For all future trips, I will have my tickets, she will have hers. I typically drive to the airport and leave my car in one of the pay lots, so I would drive myself and she can take an Uber. She will have all the freedom she wants to do whatever she wants, but it's up to her to arrive on time and board the plane. I let her know that it was starting to feel like I needed to keep track of both of us. I phrased it in a way to make it sound like I didn't want to be controlling over her and let her manage her own time. She wasn't happy with this, but she reluctantly agreed. Now to get to the bigger issue that I didn't realize we had until reading the comments of this post. Call me oblivious, but I really never thought there were any issues between Meg and Jess. After talking to my wife, she wouldn't admit to any issues and stated that she would never intentionally delay a flight so that we couldn't see our daughter, and acted offended that I would ask such a thing. If that was her actual purpose, I don't think I would be able to prove it, but it will be at the forefront of my mind in the future. After talking to Meg and Jess, we decided the following. Meg and I will be visiting Jess on Parents' Weekend, but I will be attending Father's Weekend from now on, and I will be attending by myself to get some alone time with Jess. Jess seemed very excited, and surprisingly, Meg didn't seem to have an issue with it this time. Thanks again to everyone who took the time to give me advice. I really appreciate it. Goodness, this would drive me crazy. I predict the problem will persist, and the wife will find some way to blame her husband because she clearly has issues taking accountability for her actions. My tenant did over $50,000 of damages and then asked me for a character referral. When my wife, who's 24, and I, 28 male, were starting out, we had a little old rental house downtown that we leased to male students. When we moved out of the country for a job, I figured it would be easier to rent to one family rather than chase around 6 separate broke students for rent, shared bedrooms. The first family that we put in there turned out to be a bad choice on my part. Misty, 40 female, was fine for the first 4 months or so. When I visited in person, the house was noticeably getting gross. They weren't taking care of things. This might have been somewhat forgivable, but then Misty stopped paying rent on time. To make matters worse, there was a plumbing issue that sounded expensive. The toilets were backing up, and sewage was soaking the carpets in the basement. The whole place stunk. I didn't even know why. The plumber ran a camera down the pipes to see what was happening. He informed me that the clog was the result of buildup of needles. You know, the ones that might be used for things they shouldn't be. I opted to pay $1,000 to have them use high pressure to flush out the system. Unfortunately, my house was nearly 100 years old, so the high pressure destroyed the clay connector to the city sewage system. The only way to fix it was to shut down a major residential road and dig to it for $30,000. Insurance wasn't in any hurry to pay either. I didn't have that kind of cash sitting around at the moment, and Misty was still in there. I wanted to evict Misty, but it would be a long process, and I knew that she would fight tooth and nail to stay, as she didn't want to go back to her parents, who lived just down the street. By this point, my house resembled a hoarder's home, and I suspected it was being used for criminal activity. Rather than evicting Misty, I called the health department because they were living with no running water and a porta potty that they rented in the backyard. It was gross. They also had 2 daughters there. It took a visit from a team of sheriffs to get her out, and only after the property was condemned. When Misty later did leave, she left about 100 pounds of rotting meat on the front lawn. She also left the house a giant mess and stole many of my things. I was so relieved that she was gone that I almost didn't care. She was a major source of stress in my life and in my marriage. It ended up taking several hundred hours and over $50,000 to fix up the house. Eventually, insurance came through for part of it. I tried not to be resentful about the situation because being an addict and living in a condemned building is its own punishment. There wasn't anything I could feel good about doing to her. She was already doomed to live poorly based on her own choices. By this point in life, I felt like I was above petty revenge. Besides, she had 2 kids. Oddly, Misty had the nerve to text me to ask for a character referral for a new place since she didn't have anyone else. other than her parents presumably. I was dumbfounded, but text back a thumbs up. Maybe I could save the next guy. Eventually, I did get the phone call from the next guy asking about Misty. He was a jerk to me on the phone. He was talking over me and talking down to me. He was an expert landlord doing his due diligence, etc. I tried to get my story about Misty in, but then I paused. I listened to him talk down to me some more. I'm a total stranger. Why was he acting like this? And then I waited until it was my turn. I told him, you know, Misty was great. I had some major plumbing issues, otherwise she'd still be with me. Also, she's got a cute family. Treat me with disrespect? Good luck with Misty. You two deserve each other. Misty got the place and thanked me. Then I never heard from either of them again. Petty me. With the housing crisis as bad as it is, I have zero respect for anyone who chooses to hog up housing for themselves in order to capitalize on others and take advantage of them. And the fact that people are allowed to do this is beyond me. Landlords should really stop posting stories here. Like, we get it. You're rich and see other people as tools to make even more money off of. But when you post on Reddit about how hard you have it being a greedy property owner, you're going to get a taste of your own medicine. Oh look, another rich man using people for profit. I get so sick of hearing about this. Meanwhile, here I am, struggling to afford rent, even though I have 2 other roommates in a 500 square foot apartment. You know, if it hadn't been for Reddit, I wouldn't even know how many people despise landlords. Entitled Coworker tries to schedule meetings outside of contract time and criticizes my non-work plans. I have a coworker who's really disorganized and waits until the last minute to schedule things, and so that frequently means calling a meeting at 4 on a Friday. For reference, my 8-hour workday ends at 3, so these meetings make for 10-hour plus days, and because my coworker is so disorganized and unprepared, we frequently have to cover things that should have been done ahead of time, like creating an agenda or desired outcome at the actual meeting. Because these are required meetings, usually once or twice per month, I have to go to them no matter when they're scheduled and get extended pay for working overtime. But my coworker is supposed to give at least a week's notice, and I'd definitely rather have the free time than the money. Typically, if I don't hear by Thursday afternoon that they have scheduled the meeting for 4 on a Friday, I make other weekend plans like hiking or bicycling or going out somewhere. Yesterday, Friday, the coworker attempted to schedule the meeting at 4:45, but didn't put it on my calendar until 3:05. I should have been off by then, but I had an end-of-day meeting that went over by a few minutes, so I was doing a last check of email and then shutting things down for the weekend. I saw the meeting request and responded that that wasn't enough notice for a meeting that far outside the workday, and that I normally would not have even seen the notice until the following Monday, and CC'd my boss just so they knew I wasn't trying to shirk any duties. Of course, my coworker is upset because they're required to hold the meeting by law, and it's the absolute last day to do it without filing an extension, which they've been told by my boss they're not allowed to do unless there's extenuating circumstances, and they've known about it for 2 months. They just didn't plan for it. My boss calls at 3:10 saying, "Can you please do this now and end at 4:10 and we will address it on Monday?" Fine. I was planning on leaving town, but I can leave a little bit later. Coworker responds to my boss by email and says they're using personal time between 3:10 and 4:45, so they can't hold the meeting until then, and that nothing I'm doing could possibly be important enough that I can't attend the meeting at 4:45. Boss calls coworker. Coworker confessed that their kid's birthday party is at 6 that evening, and they have to go try to find a cake and party supplies for the party before the meeting, which is why they're not available. Boss gets annoyed and says that we, boss and I, will do the meeting now, and coworker will have to answer for it on Monday. Boss and I hold the meeting, it takes 20 minutes, I'm out of there by 3:45. Coworker sends me a nastygram by text at 10:15 p.m. saying it's my fault they're in trouble and that they have a kid, so I should understand that people with kids come first, and that my activities and hobbies are pathetic, and it wouldn't have been that hard for me to just attend the meeting they scheduled, and that they'll have to go back and fix everything my boss and I did incorrectly because they like to do it a specific way. My boss had already submitted it. I responded that I hope they enjoyed their kid's birthday party and have a good weekend. They respond that they forgot to invite people so no one came, and thanks for rubbing that in their face. Update. I had a meeting yesterday with my boss about everything that had happened. My boss will be sharing extensive documentation with HR, including their own notes, and I've been asked to pull all of my calendared meetings from the last 6 months and send them to HR. I already had screenshotted them because I had to submit extended hours. Glad I did, because coworker tried to delete them and uninvited me from them when they caught wind that it was an issue of contention. My boss couldn't go into details, obviously, about their course of action with the coworker, but I do know their meeting with HR isn't until Thursday, and their meeting with my boss was after mine yesterday, which was after my workday, but not theirs. Another coworker sent me a text saying that coworker came out of their meeting with puffy red eyes that looked like they had been crying, but otherwise nothing juicy to report. As for the next steps, the one course of action I do know is that coworker will be required to provide a written apology by Friday of this week, and it will be added to their personal file. If my company follows their usual process, which my boss hinted at on Friday, coworker will basically be given the opportunity to resign from their current job and resume their old job. Or they can be administratively removed from their current job and placed in their old job. Their current job is an unfilled vacancy, to take place August 1st, but in the meantime, they will no longer be in charge of the project I've had to work on with them, and our grant department will do it instead. I've not heard from coworker for the apology, but I'm expecting something vague and without much effort put into it, probably by email at 11:59 on Friday, or what I expect is even more likely, they will put it off and claim they need the accommodation to not have to do it and drag it out with HR. Update. I received the apology. Here it is. Sorry for projecting my stress onto you. You didn't deserve to get lashed out at. It's been a rough year with the divorce and getting used to a new job. I'm stepping down in August to take care of me and my kid for a while. I'm sure that gossip is already spreading like wildfire. Thanks for putting up with me. Your coworker. Forgot to invite people to their kid's birthday party? I bet it has been a rough year, what with the divorce and all. I told my pregnant sister that her having another baby would be irresponsible of her. I'm 22 and she's 25. My sister, Mia, her son is 7 months old and the father is not in her baby's life at all. He basically left the week after the baby was born. I've been supporting the both of them financially while my sister Mia gets back on her feet and looks for a job to pay the bills all on her own. Fast forward to 2 days ago, she calls me excitedly, tells me she has big news. Deep down in my heart, I already knew what she was going to say, and my intuition was confirmed when she said she was pregnant again. She went on and on about how she met this new guy she hadn't told me about, and how nice he treats her and the baby, that she really feels like he's the one, and how she can't wait for the family she was supposed to have. I basically laid it out straight to her. She hasn't been dating this guy for very long, and yet she's already pregnant and wanting to marry him simply because he treats her and the baby nicely? He isn't helping with bills or providing in any way. This was not likely to last, and she'll be a single mom of 2. Not to mention how dangerous it is to get pregnant this soon after giving birth. She told me I was being fake and that I wasn't acting like family, that I should support her like our mother is. Turns out our mother is worshiping the ground she walks on, telling her stories about how our stepdad only knew her for 2 months before he married her, blah blah blah. I told her that I can't support her or any other kids should she decide to go through with this. I essentially said, I'm not pressuring you into anything. This is your choice, but I refuse to be financing this choice. You're on your own, Mia. I can't enable you to keep digging yourself in further holes you can't climb out of because of irresponsible, unplanned pregnancies, and I refuse to. Of course, she didn't take that well, started crying and saying how I just don't want her to be happy, how much of a jerk I am, and hung up. Our mother isn't very happy with me now. I do feel bad. I don't think I worded it the best, nor should I have called her irresponsible. I'm just at my breaking point. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. You could have worded it better, but you're on the money. It's an irresponsible decision, and she should know better. She's not entitled to your financial support, and you have the right to cut her off. Also, it makes me laugh that she calls you fake because you're the only one being real with her. Not the jerk. And honestly, I don't think she should have been nicer with her words. Her sister is an irresponsible, entitled leech. What does she expect OP to do? Provide for her for the rest of her life while she gets repeatedly knocked up by every true love she meets? Let's be honest, no one thinks this will last. The mother is also delusional. It's nice that her own quick relationship actually worked out, but if she wants the same thing for her daughter, she should be the one providing for her. I assume that's why she's angry at OP. She's eager to support Mia emotionally because that costs nothing, but she doesn't want to spend her money on her. Am I the jerk for telling my sister it's her own fault our family doesn't help her with her kids? I, 21 female, have a sister Chloe who's 32. She has 3 kids who are 8, 6, and 1. She and her husband both work and the youngest goes to daycare. Ever since the youngest has been born, my sister has had a bit of a personality shift, getting more into organic food and holistic living, as she calls it. Chloe and her husband started leaving the kids with our parents for the whole weekend every weekend so that they can get a break. My parents are doting grandparents and seem to enjoy it, but around a month ago they refused to do it anymore. Their reason being that they're too tired to keep up with the kids. They then started leaving the kids with my other sister, Avery, who's 27, every weekend. This had a similar ending. After Avery started refusing, Chloe asked me if I could babysit the kids on the weekends. I stupidly said yes. I only babysat for 3 Saturdays and had to call it quits because Chloe was driving me nuts. First of all, she has a very long list of rules for the kids while they're babysat. Some aren't so difficult to follow, like organic foods only, which is only what Chloe has in her house anyway. But others just feel silly, like no holding the baby for too long and no shows or movies from Disney. Disney? There are more, but this sub has a character limit. When I was babysitting, Chloe would be calling me every 30 minutes, and she gets angry if I don't answer straight away. Every time Chloe came home, she would go off on me over something, anything, not answering the phone quick enough, letting the baby nap too long, etc. When I told Chloe I'd no longer babysit, she got upset and said no one ever wants to help her anymore and her village is disappearing. I couldn't really pretend, and I told Chloe that it's her own fault and people would be more willing to help her if she wasn't a helicopter parent. She blew up at me and said she's demanding basic respect. Not the jerk. Though she's not a helicopter parent, since she apparently only parents 5 of 7 evenings a week and no full days, she's an overbearing, controlling freeloader. Having kids is hard, very hard, but expecting that everyone around you will do that hard stuff instead, and only according to your rules, so you can take a break every single weekend is ridiculous. Not the jerk. Chloe is a control freak who doesn't want to actually parent, she wants to control how her kids are parented. Big difference. Tell Chloe if she wants to be respected, then she has to earn it, and she can start by being respectful. Right now, all she is doing is mooching. I would hate to be one of her kids. Not the jerk. It's nice of y'all to help her with her kids, but it's not your job, and you don't have to take her crap from her just because she's your sister. You told her the truth. Just because she's unhappy with it doesn't mean she's a jerk. It just means she has to face the truth and work on the issues she's clearly dealing with. Like her control issues and whatever weirdness she has over her kids watching Disney movies. If she wants a village, she needs to treat her community with kindness and respect, and she needs to consider their diversity and be more flexible. It might be a behavioral thing. Some parents are avoiding Disney shows nowadays because the kids tend to be super bratty and disrespectful, and they don't want their kids following those examples. I admire her for not letting them watch Disney. I guarantee you that if more parents refused to let their kids watch that stuff, our mental health crisis would not be nearly as bad as it is. Just like adults' minds are programmed with the mass media, the younger minds are programmed with their shows as well. Compare the typical Amish family to the typical city family here in America. You tell me who is healthier, happier, and living more fulfilling lives. I'm evicting my long-standing tenants, and they sure aren't happy about it. I, 38 female, bought a 4-bedroom house in semi-rural Buckinghamshire when I was 23. It was a lovely big house, but the town was not fun for a 23-year-old. I always said I'd love it if I were 40 and I had kids, but it wasn't a great place for someone in their 20s. When I was 26, I put the house on the rental market and I moved to London where I lived for 2 years before moving to Australia. I found a lovely family to rent the house to, a husband and a wife, both in their mid to late 40s, with 1 kid, no pets, and respectable jobs. Rent was always paid on time, the estate agent always had good reports from inspection visits, and we never had any complaints from neighbors. Fast forward 14 years later, they're still living there. I've been traveling the world full-time for some years, spent the lockdown in Australia, then resumed traveling when everything was over. I'm now ready to return home, so I informed my estate agent that I want to break the contract and have them move out in 3 months' time, 2 months more notice than I'm obligated to give. The tenants were surprised to hear that I was coming back and tried to ask if I was coming to live with my family. The agent brushed off questions and told them to vacate in 3 months and that they can help find alternative accommodation. Tenants texted me directly to ask the same question, and I replied, "No husband or kids in tow, just ready to set roots again. Looking forward to being home." I grew up 20 minutes away from there. I got a text calling me selfish for kicking them out of their home of nearly 15 years and wanting a big house all to myself, placing my needs of travel and enjoyment ahead of starting a family and getting married. They told me I should let them buy the house for what I bought it for. It's doubled in price since then, and go live in my other house. I replied, "You can dictate in a house that you own, not the one that I own. Please have your things packed by this date or I'll evict you and sue you for the costs." My friends are saying that I'm kicking them out of their home and I don't need such a big place, so I can rent or sell my student flat for a deposit for a home nearby. My rented house is 90% paid though, and I don't want to start again with a new mortgage. I want to live in my house. I've been fair to the tenants and reasonable in my request. Am I the jerk? You're not getting them out of their home. You're getting them out of your house. They signed a rental contract and must respect it. The reason you want your house back is completely irrelevant and shouldn't enter into the equation. Even if you wanted to start a goat farm inside, you'd be within your rights. Obviously not the jerk. For the people in the comments saying you're the jerk, OP bought and invested in income property, and the income from that property paid off a percentage of the mortgage. She's not in the wrong legally or morally simply because her tenants have been living there for a long time. The commenter saying that OP owes her tenants anything is entitled and outrageous. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. It's normal in situations like this for the tenants to be disappointed, sad, and upset, but they've taken it to the next level, which is completely inappropriate. All renters know guaranteed permanency is not part of the package when you rent, unless it's a rent-to-own situation, and even those cases have caveats. It's not their property, nor is it their business why you'd like to live in your house. I would have said that nicely rather than give them the personal info they have zero rights to. I'm happy they seem to have taken care of your house and have enjoyed living there for the time they have. I'm sure they've got lovely memories in your house, but the fact remains that it's your house and not theirs. You're following the necessary legalities in addition to giving them ample bonus time to vacate. As heartbreaking as I'm sure this is, if the tenants wanted permanency, they should have purchased their own home. You're the jerk. So I find it funny how Reddit usually craps all over landlords, but now in this rare instance where a landlord is actually doing something really messed up, they all side with you. Oh gee, I wonder why that could be. Edit. Stop kidding yourselves. You know darn good and well that if OP was a man, nobody here would be stroking his ego the way they are. My daughter's grandparents want custody. I, 31 male, met Beth, 30 female, when we were in middle school. We became quick friends and saw each other every day. We did everything together and made a pact to always help each other. Like she would help me talk to girls and I made sure she was safe at bars. She was the kindest person I knew and was my person. When we were in college, Beth got pregnant with Jenny, her daughter who's now 7, from her boyfriend at the time. She was excited at first, but her parents and the father were against her having the baby. Beth stood firm that she wanted to keep it. Because of this, Jenny's father left her, saying he wasn't ready to be a father and never came back, and her parents threw her out and told her not to come home. It was a very hard time, but I told her I'd never leave her, so we moved in together and we decided to do it together like everything else we did. The day Jenny was born was probably the best day of my life. I'll never forget the first time I saw that girl's eyes, and even though she wasn't mine, I felt like I was hers. I was her uncle until she started calling me Dad, which we took as a joke, but we really never stopped her. Our little family was unconventional, but it was ours. 2 months ago, Beth passed in an accident. It was the worst day of my life. Beth and I were never together, but she was my soulmate, my better half, my everything. She was the best mother and person I've ever known. I still can't completely describe the way that I feel. Immediately, I became Jenny's legal guardian. It's been hard to adjust to it and just being me, and I'm so lost, but I want to do my best for Jenny. Which brings me to last night, when Beth's parents showed up at my door wanting to see Jenny. They want to be part of Jenny's life and regret what they did to Beth, which I completely understand. But last night, they told me that they think it's best if they take legal custody of Jenny because they're real family. They hadn't been involved in Jenny's life at all before then and only met her for the first time at Beth's funeral. I didn't know what to say and I told them to leave, which made them angry, and they told me they want to keep talking about it or they'll take me to court. I've been so anxious all night and I can't sleep. I've been Googling to see if it's possible for them to even take her just like that. She's my baby, and I'm the family she's always known. Beth and I never really talked about the legality of my role because I was just her dad, plain and simple, but maybe we should have. I don't know who to turn to or what to do. I never thought I'd have to do any of this alone. I'm just scared, and I miss Beth so much. To clear some things up, we don't live in the continental United States. Beth's parents, let's call them Mary and Larry, are really devout Catholics and couldn't stand that she had relations outside of a marriage, and especially since Jenny's dad took himself out of the equation. That's why they kicked Beth out. I've been co-parenting Jenny her whole life and contributed 50% to everything. I'm committed to giving this girl a good life. My parents have always been supportive and have been pivotal in this whole ordeal. They saw Beth as a daughter and see Jenny as a granddaughter. It's nice to have them. I had always been labeled as a caregiver in her school records. I held her when she was born, birthdays, her little kindergarten graduation, her first trip to Disney. I have pictures of all of it. There are none with Mary or Larry in them. Beth purposely threw away everything she had of them, not that she had much to begin with. I had been dating someone at the same time when everything started, but I realized I didn't have the emotional bandwidth to be good to her, and I needed to prove stability in my home life. She understood and we ended things respectfully. We may reconnect someday, but my love life is not my priority. I talked with Jenny about the situation, and from the start, she understood what they are to her. It broke her heart to hear her say, "Why would they do that to mommy?" Jenny and me are in therapy right now. While I'm not 100%, I know that I have to be strong for Jenny. Update. After reading your comments, I did exactly what some of you said. I talked with her school and told them what was happening. I've known the staff there for years. My mom is a school counselor, and they were so good about Beth's passing. Anyway, I told them that I, and only I, was allowed to pick her up from school. Thankfully, the grandparents never tried anything like taking her. They have not been allowed to spend time with her or be around her, and that was on Jenny's request. I respect that. They did send her birthday and Christmas presents, but I hid them. I didn't know if accepting something from them would hurt the situation. I haven't even given them to her yet. It's been so long, I'm not even sure if I will at this point. After my post, I talked with some lawyers around the city. Honestly, I spent a lot of money on this, but it was way worth it. Beth had a will and requested for Jenny to be cared for by me upon her passing. She never told me this, and I still don't exactly understand it, but it was a really happy surprise. My lawyer honored that and helped me. I took a loan out, but the debt is worth it. I compiled everything I could: pictures, permission slips, school mail, everything. Grandparents tried to fight me the whole way through, calling social services and talking to all of my neighbors, trying to find anything possible to prove that I was a bad father. It was brutal and messed up, and I don't think I'll ever recover from the past year. I could deal with the attacks on my character and them scrutinizing everything I've ever done as if Mary and Larry have always cared. However, in April, once Jenny came into the conversation and was asked awful questions about me, I couldn't help but double down. Part of me is embarrassed and ashamed that I begged. At the meeting, after Jenny was taken out of the room, all I could do was cry. I said something like, "Please, I beg of you, think about Jenny here. Take what you did to Beth out of the equation. Jenny does not deserve this. Think about her, please. If you want to make it up to Beth, as you say, think about what's best for Jenny. I've loved her for her whole life. I've been there. I've held her. She's everything to me. I know you have regret. Be good now. Love Beth now. Respect her wishes. Please." The next part is probably anticlimactic, but dear readers, can you believe that it worked? Larry looked down at his hands in what I can only describe as shame and asked to speak with the lawyer privately. When I came back, Larry admitted that they had made a mistake all those years ago, and it wasn't until Beth's passing that he realized it. He was tired of fighting. Mary didn't seem too happy, but they dropped everything. Since then, we've had no contact. I guess guilt runs deep. But on to the good news. Last month it became official. I'm now legally Jenny's father. I had been working on the adoption since Christmas. I can't begin to describe how happy this makes me. Jenny has been getting better and is slowly getting back to her usual bright self. But I can see moments when she shuts down, like sadness washing over her. That worries me, but we're working with a therapist on this. I still miss Beth, and I will miss her every day of my life. All I can do to honor her is to make sure Jenny has a home and is loved beyond measure. I will tell Jenny about her mom and how every time she smiles, I see her. Am I the jerk for telling my boyfriend I won't marry him if he keeps his friendship with my ex? Final update. So my boyfriend Dylan and I have been dating for almost 5 years, and he proposed 9 months ago. We've known each other since high school. However, at the time we were only friends since I was dating my ex, Jason. Long story short, he cheated multiple times and we broke off. That's when I went to college, where I started dating Dylan. They only knew each other from high school, but never had an actual friendship. Well, Dylan decided to host a party in order to celebrate our engagement, and one of his friends brought Jason. And surprise, surprise, they became friends. Now they text every day, go out on the weekends, or even have dinner together constantly. At first, I didn't think too much of it, but now I'm uncomfortable. I talked about this with Dylan after he came back home from work. I established that his friendship with Jason is concerning to me and how he spends more time with him, but told me that I was exaggerating. We kinda had an argument about how Jason cheated and lied to me for years, and how could he be okay with that? He said that people can change and that he didn't mean it, blah blah blah. We didn't talk much after that, but then he apologized and told me he'll take me to dinner at my favorite restaurant the next day in order to compensate for the time we haven't really had these past weeks. I was really excited. I even went to get my hair done and bought a really pretty dress that afternoon. We'd see each other at the restaurant since he can't get out of work earlier. Well, an hour passed and there was no sign of him. I started to get worried and called him repeatedly. Then he arrived, looking terrible. He was drunk and even smelled like cigarettes. I asked him where he was at and he tried to avoid the question. I asked him again and his guilty face told me everything. He was with Jason. I was livid and left the restaurant. We had an argument outside and he confessed that he had promised Jason to go with him to visit this new bar at his house and didn't want to fail him. But I said it seemed he cared more about him than us, that he should get married to him if he's that important. He said he was the only one who understands him, not like me. I exploded and told him that if he doesn't cut him off, then I won't marry him. He started crying and called me a jerk for putting him in that position, then he left. Now his mom and sister are calling me the jerk and manipulative of his life. I'm at my sister's house, but I really don't know if what I did makes me the jerk or not. Edit. Jason called me. He asked me if we could see each other to talk about something. He didn't disclose what it was, but all he said was it was important. Update. We went to a coffee shop near my house and we talked. He said that he was sorry for what Dylan did and that if he had known Dylan had a plan with me already, he would have canceled immediately because he cares for me and that he was sorry for our past issues, that he has changed and he's a better man now. I went straight to the point and asked him what he wanted. He continued by saying that he only was telling me this because he cares and wants me to be happy. The thing is that Dylan is gay. Jason is known since high school because he cheated on me with Dylan. I knew Jason was a cheater because someone sent me pics of him kissing other girls, but I never saw him with a guy, so I had no clue. He said it was just a fling and cut contact with him a year after it and for a long time. Then Dylan reached out to invite him to a party, yes, our engagement party, where he cheated on me with Jason again. We didn't live together at the time, so when I thought he was in his house, he was actually hooking up with him. Jason realized what they did was wrong and that he didn't want me to be with a jerk like Dylan, so he flirted with Dylan in order to make him leave me so I could find someone who can actually treat me the way I deserve. At first, he thought Dylan would do it, but little by little he realized that he won't let me go because he's afraid of the world finding out. Jason threatened him that if he loved me, he'd leave me. Dylan refused, so Jason pretended to lose interest in him. Dylan became obsessed and afraid that he'd leave, so every time he could, he'd talk to him, see him, etc. But since he never confessed his true self, he decided to tell me, so I just don't waste more time with him. I couldn't hold my tears. I was so heartbroken. I didn't realize Jason was hugging me. Continued saying that he was sorry, but I needed to know the truth, and that if I ever need anything, I can call him. I left and packed all my stuff from the house. I took everything and went back to my sister's. There's still no sign of Dylan. He hasn't even called or texted. Nothing. And I'm starting to believe what Jason said is actually true. I'm feeling betrayed, lied to, and mad. I don't know what to do next, but at least I know the truth. Thanks for reading. Update. Dylan never called me, so I decided to force him on telling me the truth. He was with a friend that told me so I visited him. He didn't want to talk to me, but I insisted. He started by saying he was sorry. He needed to clear his head, and then he'll come back home. I told him it wasn't necessary. I didn't want to get married anymore. He was mad and started going off on me. I then told him that I knew about everything with Jason and him and how he was a coward for using me to hide who he was. He was crying, saying that was BS, that I want to belittle him. After a few minutes, he gave up and implored me to not tell his family or anyone. I said I wouldn't do it, but still, I won't marry him. I gave him the ring, but he grabbed my hand, told me how could I do this to him, that I want to hurt him. I owed him this. I asked him to let me go, but he didn't. My friend had to pull us apart. Dylan was screaming and getting aggressive, saying that I should stop lying. I cheated on him with Jason, and I just wanted to blame him for it. My friend told him to get out, and he did. After this, his family called asking what I'd done to him, calling me a liar and a snake. Told them to talk to Dylan, and if they continue harassing me, I'd get the police involved. Jason also reached out, sent me flowers, and I threw them away. I told him to leave me alone and never contact me again if he didn't want me to get a restraining order. I haven't heard from them since that. Don't know how to start fresh. We were supposed to get married in July. I'm supposed to pick up my dress this weekend. My mom and sister told me that they'll help me with it, but they'll need me because I paid for it, so I'm the only one who can cancel it. Today I cut my hair and cried on the way back. I'm crying while writing this too. It's been so much and I feel horrible. So I guess that's it. Am I the jerk for telling my sister-in-law exactly what having a big family would mean for her? My husband, 42 male, and I, 38 female, have 6 kids. 3 are biologically ours, who are 8 and 6, and 3 are adopted, who are 10, 7, and 3. We make a high 6-figure income combined. We're debt-free, as well as we own our own house outright. It's all relevant. My husband and his brother were raised by parents who ignored them and used to talk all the time about having a big family when they grew up. They were upfront with me and sister-in-law about wanting a lot of kids from our early days of dating. Sister-in-law and brother-in-law are starting to try for their first kid, and sister-in-law has been leaning on me for emotional support, which I'm very glad to provide. Last Sunday, she asked me to be brutally honest about what it's like to have 6 kids. I told her that my experience will not be very helpful to her, seeing as how our situations are very different, and she asked me to explain. So I told her that I'm a stay-at-home mom-wife with a passive income in the high 6 figures. My husband makes over $300,000 a year, so we're lucky enough to not have to think about the financials when it comes to a large family. Same goes with childcare. I have 2 nannies. That's the only way I've found to be able to give all my kids the attention they need, seeing as my youngest has health issues, and that even without those health issues, 6 kids are a lot of work without someone there. And finally, my husband and I were looking into adoption and surrogacy because pregnancy is hard on the body. So 3 was my limit of pregnancies, and that we were lucky we were able to foster and to adopt our 3 adoptive kids. But if we didn't, adopting 3 extra kids or hiring surrogates was going to be very expensive. Well, apparently she talked with brother-in-law and told him what I said, as well as how they should maybe space having kids more so they could give them higher living standards. And now he's accusing me of manipulating her and being a jealous jerk who wants to be the only one with a big family. Was I the jerk for telling her everything I did? Not the jerk. Your brother-in-law very well knows that what you said was true, and it must hurt to know that his big family plan will probably not work because of their life choice and lack of money. They're just shooting the messenger. Not the jerk. Normally, telling people about your wealth isn't the best idea, but in this case, having such a high income is how you manage to have 6 kids, and you were right to be upfront about it. It's now or never for me to have kids, and my fiancé told me he's not ready, and I'm devastated by his decision. My fiancé and I have been together for a couple of years now. When we first started seeing each other, we were both on the same page as far as goals for a relationship. We both wanted a kid and to get married. Everything has been great. I adore him, and I know he loves me as well. I've never had such a great relationship. Recently, I've been faced with some medical issues that have left us with a choice to have a kid now or never have one at all. This was very hard to come to terms with, but I know that I would rather try now than risk never having one. He, on the other hand, said he wasn't ready. He explained to me why he isn't. He's worried about our finances. He's worried about our relationship failing because of stress. Every worry he has is completely valid, and I don't fault him one bit. He himself has cried to me over this decision and has expressed how sorry he is that he can't commit to this right now. I'm absolutely devastated that he doesn't want to go for it, and I'm stuck between assuring him that his fears are valid and also being upset at him. And I hate that I'm upset with him. How do I move forward in our relationship in a healthy way? I've had precancerous cells found in my cervix. They removed quite a lot of my cervix during my last procedure, and I'm left with enough to have a healthy pregnancy, but once they do it again, that won't be the case anymore. Cervical cancer is slow to progress, so one prognosis is, as far as that is concerned, not bad. They are monitoring closely to make sure it doesn't get to that point. He's been heavily involved and understands all of my medical issues. He's been a great support. He isn't worried about me not being there as far as that, or if he hasn't let me onto it. He has expressed that he is worried I'll wake up one day and decide I don't want to be with him anymore, and that was one of his worries as far as trying for a baby goes. But I don't understand that one. I've never given him any indication that I want anything but him, and I can't figure out why he is concerned of me doing that. But I also don't want to dismiss that fear either. I've decided already to have a hysterectomy. I just really wanted to try for a baby first. Like you, I don't trust that the cells won't spread slowly, but I was reassured it would be okay if we wanted to go for it first. Now that this decision has been made, I think I need to just go to my doctor and request I have the hysterectomy. This is tricky, as if you choose to accept his decision, then you potentially lose ever having kids. Will you grow to resent him? Can you handle that? It's time to ask yourself if your desire to try for a baby is a hard line. OP, you're right. I need to really sit down with myself and decide what is my hard line. I don't want to resent him. I very much love every aspect of our relationship, and it destroys me to see him so upset about his own decision on the matter. Update. Well, I'm pregnant. We're both in shock, honestly. After I posted, we had another discussion, and he told me the right decision shouldn't hurt this much, indicating that he was upset with his decision not to try for a baby when we had the chance. About 2 days later, I noticed something felt off with my IUD. I scheduled an appointment, and my doctor took a look and said, "Well, that's not where it should be." So for at least a couple of weeks, my IUD was not offering any protection against pregnancy, and well, we unintentionally got pregnant during that time. However, it's all okay. After I had my IUD removed because of its misplacement, he told me he didn't want me to get back on birth control. So while it was unintentional to get pregnant, it's not unwelcome from either of us. He was ready to try, and although it's much sooner than either of us thought, we are optimistic about the serendipitous turn of events. Am I the jerk for telling my best friend why I wouldn't be attending his wedding? I'm 32 male, and my best friend, Alex, 32 male, we've been friends since we were in diapers. We're basically family. After college, we both moved back home so we could live at home and get our feet underneath us. Alex started dating Stella, 35 female, a lovely girl, around 4.5 years ago, and from the get-go, she seemed to politely dislike me. Alex and Stella moved across the country in 2021 after Stella earned a promotion at work. In 2022, Alex proposed. She said yes, and they set a wedding date for the end of September 2023. I got a save the date card at the beginning of the year, and based on the conversations I had with Alex, assumed I would be in the wedding party, either as a groomsman or the best man, but never received any official confirmation from either of them. Couple months before the wedding, I saw that wedding invitations had gone out on social media and figured mine was in the way. It never came. I waited a couple of weeks, figured it might have just gotten lost in the mail before I checked in with him. I called Alex and had a brief conversation with him where he was clearly agitated and said he was dealing with a lot, wouldn't be available for the near future to direct any wedding-related questions to Stella, and he had called me when things cooled off. I called, texted, and emailed Stella several times over the course of a week, but she didn't respond to any of them. At this point, I figured I wouldn't be attending the wedding and that things were really messed up for some reason between the two of us. Yesterday, a little over 3 weeks after our last conversation, Alex DM'd me asking if I was free to chat. I jumped at the opportunity to get some answers, and after exchanging pleasantries, Alex jumped right into his spiel, saying that he knew I was super busy with work and dealing with a lot of personal stuff, but he'd love it if I could still attend his wedding, even just as a guest, and wanted to know if there was anything he could do to help make that happen. I just blurted out that I'd love to, but I hadn't received an invitation. Alex stared blankly at me and said, "What?" And I just kind of verbal vomited out that I hadn't received an invitation. That was the reason I'd called him a few weeks ago, that I'd contacted Stella about it, but she never got back to me and left me on red, and that I had no idea what he was talking about, me dealing with too much to be involved in the wedding. After a very pregnant pause, he said he needed to go sort out some things, and that he had called me when it was done. My phone's blowing up since with wedding attendees asking me what happened and why the wedding might be off now. My girlfriend has reaffirmed to me that I did nothing wrong, but I've had people from all sides saying I stuck my nose where it didn't belong and caused a stink, which is really messing with my head. Am I the jerk? Well, either this was all a big misunderstanding or Stella is a cold, manipulating jerk. My new Karen neighbor has been using me as a free babysitter, and I never even knew. I, 23 male, live within 1 mile of 4 elementary schools, so there are tons of kids around here. I have a garden, so I'm outside a lot, and most of the neighborhood kids end up at my lawn at some point in the day. For the most part, it doesn't bother me. They're all great kids, and they have tons of questions about plants, gardening, composting, all that good stuff. I recently finished my PhD in plant systematics, so I honestly do enjoy teaching them about plants and seeing them get excited to learn about it. Also, it is a bit refreshing to have kids running around and screaming outside rather than sitting in front of screens. Recently, an issue has come up though. I was out gardening and the kids came by as usual. I finished up earlier than usual and I went inside. About an hour later, someone is literally banging on my front door. It's my neighbor, and after I open it, she instantly starts screaming about how I left her kids alone out there for an hour. And I was at first a bit confused. After some more discussion, I learned that she lets her kids outside every day and tells them to hang out with me while she goes and does whatever. Eventually, I just apologized and I closed the door. After some thinking though, I really don't think I'm in the wrong. I'm not okay with watching someone's kids. First, I didn't even know I was watching them. What if someone had gotten hurt? I wouldn't even know what to do. Second, I feel like this is neglect. She doesn't know me anywhere near well enough to have me babysit for her while she leaves. Lastly, childcare is expensive for a reason. I've been watching these kids for free? So I went and knocked on her door. Maybe I was a bit harsh, but I told her that I'm not a babysitter and I will no longer allow her kids near my house or me. I told her I was extremely uncomfortable by this situation, and if she leaves them outside without someone watching them again, I will call the authorities. I would not like to do that at all. She went off saying she can't afford childcare and I'm a jerk to not just watch her kids when she needs help. I've now gone to the rest of my neighbors and told them that I do not want any of their kids in my yard, and I explained the whole situation. Most were very understanding and they watched their own kids. Today, one boy came by and I asked him to leave and he said okay, but he was clearly holding back tears and now I'm feeling like a jerk. I'm needing some outside opinion. Am I the jerk for this? How do I even handle this situation? Not the jerk. As you say, this woman would be the first to blame you if something did happen to her kids. And since she never officially came over and said, "Hey, I've just got to run some errands. Can you watch my kids for 15 minutes?" They were never officially in your care. I'd still call the authorities and voice concerns if I were you. She clearly isn't looking after her kids that well if she just offloads them to anyone randomly. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or the neighbor? Please let us know. Talk about an entitled parent. Make my coworkers cry? I'll help karma turn your life upside down. Backstory. I worked at this hotel for over 2 years and was one of 2 people left that went through the training when our hotel changed hotel franchises. During this training, we were told about certain rules the company had. Cast. We've got the manager. Front desk manager. He only was here for 4 to 6 months at this point. We've got me. I'm a nice guy, unless you are a bully or entitled person. A few others I will mention as we go through. Story. One afternoon, I was scheduled to work second shift, 3 to 11. I walked in, and both AM front desk coworkers looked like they had been massively crying as their makeup was all smeared. My manager looking quite upset. I ask, "What's wrong?" Manager, "We have a major jerk as a guest. This guy is the highest level on the rewards for the hotel chain. He's very demanding and wants free upgrades, free this and that, and he screams anytime he has an interaction with the staff. This guy has made every department call me complaining about him. Now this guy just came to the desk and screamed at these 2 coworkers until they were both crying. These 2 ladies were fresh high school graduates and were very sweet and innocent people. They loved helping people and didn't deserve this treatment." As he's explaining this, I look up this guy's room details. Once my manager finishes explaining everything this guy had done, I see this guy's info and I had a smile from ear to ear. I reply, "Didn't you see he's an employee of a different hotel?" Manager, "Yes, but so what?" I replied, "First off, while you travel as an employee, you're required to behave and be respectful. It's in the fine print on the discount form." I grabbed his form and showed it to the manager. Failure to be respectful can lead to having your employee discount suspended or permanently revoked, and even get you terminated. You need to call this guy's hotel and ask for the GM, then explain to him who you are and what this guy is doing. I look up the hotel phone number and call the hotel and then hand my manager the phone. Manager, after his call ends with the GM, has an evil and satisfying smile on his face. His GM is steaming mad after I described all the stuff this guy's done. Main switchboard phone rings. I answered. "Hello, thank you for calling our hotel. How may I direct your call?" Caller. "I want to speak to Entitled Jerk's room, please." I replied, "Absolutely, sir. Have a nice day." Transferred the call and looked at my manager and saying with a sarcastic tone, "Someone wanted to talk to Entitled Jerk. Gee, I wonder who that could be." Manager continues after he stopped laughing. "The GM gave me his personal cell phone number and said if I have any more issues at all to call him immediately. I'm leaving the phone number next to the switchboard if you need it to call him." I told manager, "Your revenge is done. Now for my revenge." Manager wide-eyed. "Oh crap, what are you going to do?" Me smiling a very evil smile. "You'll see." I pick up the phone to make a call. "Hello, Hotel Rewards customer service. Yes, I would like to report someone using rewards account while using employee discount on his stay." Customer service. "He can't do that." I replied, "I know, I'm calling to report him." I gave her the guest reservation number and rewards member number. I continued, "I bet anything if you dig through this guy's history, you'll find all his stays are probably at employee discount." Customer service. "I'm starting a ticket to have this guy's account investigated." I replied, "Thank you." Then hang up the phone. The manager watched as I then removed his rewards number from his stay. My manager had a huge grin on his face. "That was awesome." I explained, "Oh, I'm not quite finished with him yet. It's time to go spread the news to all departments he is no longer a rewards member. I made a new key for his room without concierge access. I walked around every department. As I explained while I was stopping by, everyone had the exact same reaction as I mentioned the guy's name. Oh God, now what about this jerk? I finished explaining how he was no longer a rewards member, and if he gives anyone issues to call the front desk immediately, and his GM already probably tore him a new one just a minute ago. Everyone was so happy at this news. I finally went to the concierge room and used the guest's new key to void his current key. Then I walked into the room and explained the information to the evening concierge. She cringed at the mention of his name. After explaining she would not have to deal with him again, and she asked to leave the morning person a note about this guy not allowed in the concierge room anymore. She was very happy. While I was gone, evidently, the manager explained what we did to the 2 a.m. front desk ladies. The minute I got back to the desk, both my front desk coworkers all came up to me and gave me a huge hug and thanked me so many times. Manager to me after the other coworkers went home. "Do me a huge favor, please." I replied, "Sure, what's up?" Manager, "If I ever upset you, please come tell me so I can fix the issue." Later that night, entitled jerk comes to the desk, hat in hand, politely saying his key doesn't work. I replied, "Oh, so sorry about that. Let me make you a new key," and my best fake smile I can muster. Aftermath. Next day, I check his rewards account and it's now suspended. Check back next week. Sorry, account number not found. Am I the jerk for banning my sister-in-law's son from my house until she finds out what's wrong with him? I'm 33, female. My husband and I host all of our family gatherings. We have a 5-year-old daughter. This story also concerns my brother, who's 37, and his girlfriend, Stacy, who's also 37. Stacy has a son, George, who's 7, from a previous relationship. George has severe behavioral problems that became evident from the first time we met him. He's hyperactive, destructive, belligerent, nasty, and his mother can't manage him. Whenever his mother brings him to family events, we're all on high alert. He has to be watched constantly, especially around any of the other kids or animals. We've not had an event with him present where at least one thing hasn't ended up broken. He will break plates, throw food, throw tantrums, screaming and flopping around on the floor, and more. It's exhausting to have him around, and frankly, the kid freaks me out. We've all kept out of it because he's not our kid, but he's not even my brother's kid, so it's certainly not our place. But our whole family knows there is something not right with him. Earlier this year, the family all visited us at our vacation home, and George was his usual self. The final straw was him using language he shouldn't have been and saying horrible things when he was talking to my daughter. My husband stepped in, and a crying George played the victim to his mother, and this caused an argument between my husband and me, and my brother and Stacy. I told Stacy we had absolutely had enough, and that her child of the corn would not be allowed back in my house until she found out what was wrong with him and had a plan to manage his behavior going forward. At the time, everyone supported our decision because they all said it was high time Stacy recognized that George's behavior was not normal. Boys will be boys' behavior. We haven't seen them since summer. About a week ago, we were all locking in plans for Christmas, which we planned to spend at a ski resort. Stacy texted me to confirm about plans, and I asked her what she had done about George. She said nothing official, but his behavior had been getting better. I told her nothing except some kind of diagnosis from a medical professional and a documented plan to mitigate his behavior would get him back in my house. Stacy has since been complaining to everyone that I'm discriminating against her kid and that his behavior has improved. She's also accused me of thinking she's a bad mother because she works and of disliking her and George because he's not my brother's kid. None of that is true. Everyone is saying I should relent and let them come on the understanding that she is responsible for any damages and will leave if he acts up. I don't want to bend on this because I don't want a drama-filled Christmas or to have to be the bad guy and kick them out around the holidays with no other plans. Am I the jerk? Edit. People were asking about the resort, so to clarify, we own a chalet in the resort and the whole family will be staying at our chalet over the Christmas holidays. Not the jerk. I personally would cancel on hosting the whole family at the resort this Christmas since everyone is pushing you to cave to Stacy. Make it a private holiday for you, your husband, and your daughter. Let your extended family make their own holiday plans and even host George in their homes. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know. Don't worry, OP. I can't stand children of the corn either. My Karen niece demands I pay the down payment on a house that she wants. Not gonna happen, Karen. I'm male, 54. My niece, Sierra, who's 25, is an only child and she just got married about 3 months ago. My sister, who's 58, admitted to me that she and her husband paid over $35,000 for her wedding at a venue on the coast. They had to dip in their home equity for most of that money. My wife, who's 53, and I make significantly more money than my sister and her husband, but we live well within our means. We do splurge on once-a-year vacations, and we paid for our kids' educations, but that's it. We even cap how much we're allowed to spend on each other for our birthdays or Christmas, etc. When our kids, who are 30, 28, and 24, got engaged, we offered to either pay for their dream wedding or host their wedding at my parents' lake house and gift them the balance of a down payment on their homes. About the lake house, my parents are deceased. My sister and I own it, renting it out most of the time and splitting the money. It's more than maintenance costs, but not that much more. All 3 of our kids took us up on the offer, so all 3 are homeowners. This kind of nuked our accrued savings for a bit, but we've built back up a sizable amount since then, and we're glad to help our kids get a solid financial base in life. My sister told me she offered the same deal to Sierra, but Sierra wanted her dream wedding instead. I thought she was crazy, but she's not my daughter, so it's none of my business. Well, it became my business. Apparently, Sierra's been stewing over the last couple of months after my daughter and her husband hosted their first family 4th of July at their new home. It's not new, it was built over 40 years ago, but it is solid, has lots of room, a huge backyard, and my son-in-law has been working overtime with very impressive do-it-yourself projects. My sister told me Sierra had asked them for a down payment so they could get a house too. After paying Sierra's college tuition and expenses and her wedding, they're tapped out. I had a feeling Sierra would show up on my doorstep, and that's exactly what she did. Sierra and her husband showed up with a cake. My wife loves cake. She told us about their honeymoon, how she loves being married, and how much she looks forward to giving us grandnieces and grandnephews. The whole time, her husband is looking more and more uncomfortable. As soon as Sierra said, "I just wish we could buy a house like my cousins," I just shook my head and said, "No, Sierra, we're not giving you the down payment." She just froze for a moment, then asked me why not. We had the money, and we could even make it a loan, and they can pay us back if we wanted. I told her I don't loan money to family members. If I put money in a family member's hand, it's a gift. Life is just easier that way. I reminded Sierra that my kids have homes because instead of blowing $35,000 on a dream wedding, they spent far less to get married at their grandparents' lake house, so the money they would have spent went to their down payment. I also reminded her that her mother offered her the same deal, but she refused it because she wanted her wedding to be, in her own words, better than theirs. Most importantly, I said that I'm not going to disrespect my own kids' wise financial decisions by rewarding her foolish decision. When she asked what was foolish, I said, "All you were thinking about was the wedding. My kids were thinking about their marriages." Of course, this upset Sierra and she left in tears. Her husband apologized, but I'm not sure if it was because she was crying, they were leaving in such an awkward way, or if he thought Sierra was wrong. Anyway, my sister said that she agrees with me, but that I'm still a jerk because I was so blunt about it. I'll admit that I am blunt while my sister sugarcoats everything. My wife, my kids, and my brother-in-law, Sierra's father, are all in complete agreement, but the consensus does seem to be that it's not what I said, but how I said it. ETA, my kids joke that I'm as subtle as a sledgehammer. I guess that's why I'm here. Was I the jerk for being as blunt as I was? Not the jerk. You gave her a much-needed lesson in the consequences of choices. If you want to talk about jerk behavior, Sarah wanting to one-up your kids on the wedding and then use your money to pay for her petty move is the height of jerk behavior. She deserved every word you said and more. And nothing you said was rude. Blunt isn't necessarily rude. OP probably saved himself a lot of unnecessary begging by making his answer clear. With people like his niece, if you sugarcoat it, they take it as a sign that there's a space for negotiation, and then you're in for a world of awkwardness. Not the jerk. Like you said, she had a choice between a wedding and a house. She chose the wedding. A lot of people don't like it when you tell them the truth. In this case, she needs to be told the truth. You don't want her to think that she has any hope in the future to get money from you. To put it even more bluntly, no chance in heck. Well, what would you do if you were OP? Would you pay for your niece's down payment or not? Please let us know. If it weren't for these stories, I never would have had a clue how many people feel entitled to other people's money. Deny my ability to use my backyard when my dog is dying? Alright, you'll no longer be able to enjoy yours. A couple months ago, our lovely older pit bull was fighting cancer, and we had the painful decision made to have her put down. She was low on energy at this point, moving was difficult, and getting her to eat was near impossible. With that, one of the only things we wanted to give her was one last day outside in the backyard. So the day before she was to be put to sleep, in the early morning, I set out to set up a tent in the backyard and filled it inside and outside with things our dog absolutely loved. I noticed as I was setting things up, the neighbor behind us was placing sticks and leaves in their fire pit, which normally I wouldn't care at all, but the poor dog is having trouble breathing at this point. I figured it wouldn't be an imposition to let them know my current situation and ask if they could postpone the burning just for today. The wife let me know that they are just going to be burning a few things to clear their yard and it won't last very long at all, and she gave me some level of understanding about the dog. With that, she lit up the fire and the smoke billowed into my backyard. For some context, the neighbor is directly behind my property. I have about a 100-foot by 100-foot backyard, and theirs is about 50-foot by 100-foot. Just to add to this, I don't mind if people are burning things around me. I'm not particularly fond of it, but if it makes them happy, then it makes me happy. A few hours go by. I notice they're still outside, adding more things to the fire. I approach them and ask kindly on the ETA, trying to be as patient and understanding as possible. They say they're almost done. A few hours later, there's a raging fire outside, and I can visibly see the husband outside pointing at my home, yelling, and then adding actual campfire logs, no longer leaves and sticks. At this moment, I'm not angry, I'm just very sad. Poor dog isn't going to have the last day we wanted to give her. We would take her somewhere else, but we don't want to stress her out, so we spend the rest of the day inside. Later that night, around 9 p.m., as the sun is setting, I go out for a walk, and I notice the fire is still roaring. Mind you, as it was most of the time, with no one there. At this moment, I'm now ticked off and starting to look into state laws, city laws, and everything in between. From this, I found out that my city has an ordinance that clearly states that a fire pit cannot be within 50 feet of a structure. I could, if I wanted to, contact the city and have it stopped simply because no matter where they place it in their backyard, it will be within 50 feet of their home. But that seems non-permanent enough. I was already considering getting a fence installed and already had multiple quotes. It was hard to swallow a bill for $15,000, but within 24 hours of this situation, guess what I paid for? The fence will be installed within the next couple of weeks around the edge of my property, and their fire pit is no further away than 10 feet from my fence. Can't take a single day away from your fire pit for my dying dog? Well, enjoy never being able to use it again. My dad kicked me out as a teen, but I had the last laugh. When I was 17 years old, I would mostly just play World of Warcraft and do the bare minimum in high school. During my senior year, I had over 20 absences, most involved me skipping to play games. I lived in a rural farmhouse, so internet was expensive and unreliable. This is 2008. We were poor and didn't have internet, but my neighbor did, and unbeknownst to my dad, 46 male, and stepmom, 32 female, I set up a wireless extender, with that neighbor's permission, so I could do homework. It just barely reached my bedroom and the back deck. I'd play games in my room on the internet all the time, and my parents didn't even realize I had internet. They just figured that World of Warcraft was another non-internet game, and I didn't enlighten them. As I got close to graduation, I did some self-reflection and decided to give video games up. I had given them up for an entire week and was so proud of myself that I decided to open up to my father and tell him about my progress. I told him that I had had internet for over 6 months and that it reached my bedroom. I didn't mention the extender. My dad was not pleased that I had been playing this many games under his nose. Up until then, he was a fairly absentee parent, but then he wanted to lay down the law, and he demanded to take permanent possession of my laptop so he could sell it and presumably cut me off of any future gaming. This felt unfair to me because the laptop was a gift from my grandmother and I couldn't afford to replace it. He also wanted to drive me to and from school, where I previously had a lot more freedom on a bike. I was almost 18 years old and felt like I had taken care of my own problems and didn't need this. I didn't give my dad the laptop. I had hidden it under one of my dad's broken cars. When it became clear I wouldn't surrender my laptop, my dad didn't take it well and lost it on me. I moved out to my friend's house a few farms over to finish high school. His parents were super supportive. They didn't like my dad much. I wasn't welcome back at my dad's house. On one occasion, when I saw my dad and stepmom's car gone, I snuck into the house to get my things. My stepmom had already packed up my room into neat boxes. Weirdly, I noticed that my dad's entire computer setup was on the house's back porch. He was using the internet. No doubt for videos that he was watching behind my stepmom's back. On my way out, I walked to the edge of the property where the wireless extender was and I took it with me. He didn't even know about it anyway. When I finally did talk to my dad 8 months later, he asked if I knew how to fix the internet. Am I the jerk for refusing to take down my Dodgers gear when I live in enemy territory? I'm a fourth-generation Angelino, Los Angeles native, and a die-hard Dodgers fan. I had to move out of state because my work moved its headquarters to Texas and because it was becoming too expensive to live in LA. I currently live in Houston. My wife and I hate it here. We regret it and we're looking to move soon. We still love LA, so we have reminders from home everywhere. I adore baseball, so my car has Dodgers stickers. I wear Dodgers shirts on the regular, and I have a Dodgers flag flying on the front lawn. My neighbors don't like it. Of course they don't, because it's Houston, so they're Astros fans. For those who don't know, the Houston baseball team, the Astros, cheated during the 2017 World Series and got away with it. So yeah, we get told to get over that year often. Recently, I got a letter from the HOA telling me to take down my flag because it's an eyesore. I say, no way, Jose, because there is nothing in the bylaws limiting what flags I can have up. Also, my neighbors have more offensive flags up, and I don't see anyone complaining about them. I threw the letter away, but we still got neighbors telling us to get over that game and to deal with it. As for me, my wife thinks we should take the flag down until we move, and is not happy when I told the obnoxious neighbor that we won our World Series title fair and square, unlike you guys. Am I the jerk? I don't think I am, but my wife does. Update. We moved back to Los Angeles over the summer. Things weren't as hard as my wife and I would have thought. We looked around online and recruited our family and friends to what we called Operation Get Out. The objective was to find an affordable place to go live and get out of here. Given everything going on over there, we didn't want to raise our daughters in Texas. Also, all of our family and friends were in California, and we wanted her to know her grandparents. With the help of my father-in-law, we bought a small house half an hour away from Los Angeles. It's a fixer-upper, but my wife has been loving the renovation project so far. We just finished the kitchen and the nursery. My wife can't wait to tackle the living area next year. I found a new job that lets me work from home a couple of days a week so I can stay with our girl. Speaking of our girl, she hadn't been born when I made my post. My wife and I took a baby moon trip to Mexico to enjoy our last vacation before she arrived. Only Hannah decided that she didn't want to be born in Texas and crashed the trip. I'm a little disappointed that we broke the cycle of the fifth generation born in LA, but Hannah is a healthy, strong girl, and that's more important. And we have an interesting story as to why our half-Asian daughter now has Mexican citizenship. Thanks for confirming that I'm not a jerk. Viva los Dodgers! Am I the jerk for not making an effort to increase my child support payments after coming into some money? I got divorced 5 years ago and I lost a lot. My ex got the apartment and our car. I was okay with it because she had our kids and I wanted everything to be as stable as possible for them. I ended up moving in with my grandmother to make ends meet. My ex and I were doing a decent job of being co-parents, I thought. I spent a lot of time with my kids and I've never missed a child support payment. My grandmother became ill during lockdown and I was basically her caregiver. She made it through, but it really took a toll on her. She passed about 2 months ago. I'm an only child, but my parents are both irresponsible, which is why they couldn't help me out when I needed somewhere to live. My grandmother made me her main beneficiary when she passed. All that she said was to take care of my kids. I sold her house after I gave everyone their bequests. I took the money and the rest of the estate, and I bought myself a house and a car. Her house was old and not in a great neighborhood for the kids. I also put money into my kids' educational fund. When my ex found out what I did, she was upset. She said that I owed her more child support now. I checked with my lawyer before I did anything. Money from an inheritance, the sale of a house, or a lottery win does not count as income. If I had invested the money instead, then the interest would count as income. She thinks I intentionally did her over. I think I now have a good reliable car for work and a nice small house in a good neighborhood for when I have the kids with me. We're fighting about it, but I don't think I'm in the wrong. You're not the jerk. It sounds like you spent several years living tight, sharing an apartment with your grandmother, taking care of her, etc. You certainly weren't living high on the hog then, and you aren't now. You bought a small home and a reliable car, both things that will benefit your kids. You put money in their educational funds. It sounds like you're being really responsible with the money, and she's just mad that she doesn't benefit from it. It's not like you came into a huge fortune and bought a beach condo and private plane. Even if you had, you still wouldn't owe your ex anything for our purposes here. I hope your lawyer is correct. No. If she wants to go back to court to get child support readjusted, she is within her right to do so. But just because you have a small windfall from a passing and ensuring that your kids have a safe way to and from your house that is also safe doesn't mean she is entitled to a cut of anything and everything you earn or receive financially. She isn't entitled to any windfall just because you have kids with her. Am I the jerk for suggesting my wife lower her standards so that she'll be less overwhelmed? My wife, 37 female, and I, 38 male, Have 3 kids who are 12, 10, and 8. She's in a constant state of overwhelm and very easily irritated, constantly complaining how it's all too much. I'm of course happy to help and do my fair share for the kids or household, but it's never enough because our standards are too darn high. She insists one of us has to be up at 6:45 every morning to make sure the kids are ready and get to the bus on time, which comes at 7:45. I told her they're old enough to not need that much help already. They can all dress themselves and pour themselves cereal and milk. There's no reason for us to be up. She says that cereal isn't a good enough breakfast. They need something more substantial, especially the 12-year-old, and that the 10-year-old has ADHD and will definitely struggle without help in the morning. And anyway, she wants to see them off and kiss them goodbye for the day. So she gets up and I don't. Then she gets upset that I never give her a morning off when all she needs to do is just take the morning off when she wants and let the kids handle themselves. Also, she's super strict about screen time during the week and is exhausted and snappy from arguing about it with the kids and upset that I don't support her strict limit of 2 hours a day. I say as long as homework is done, why not until bed? She says it's not healthy for them. They need to play outside or with games and toys, read some books, just entertain themselves in more ways than one. I agree that they should enjoy other things, but not seeing why we have to make such a rigid limit. She also likes to go out on weekends and do stuff like zoos, museums, etc., but then complains about the planning for the outing and how grouchy the youngest gets by the end of it. And again, I say, let's just chill at home and voila, you've cut the work. I'm an engaged and active parent. I'm not trying to get out of it, but I don't think I should have to help my wife dig herself out of her own self-created holes. She creates the stress for herself and then turns to me to alleviate it, which I think is unfair. Am I the jerk for telling her she needs to do less and then she won't need this level of help? You're the jerk. Your wife's standards are just being a decent parent, and you're not doing your fair share if you aren't helping with these things you consider unnecessary. An 8-year-old and a 10-year-old with ADHD are not ready to totally get themselves ready in the morning, and you'd know that if you didn't sleep through the morning routine every day. 2 hours of screen time a day is a totally reasonable boundary, and family time and enriching activities are also important. Maybe those can be cut down slightly, but just chilling at home all the time isn't the answer either. Stop being lazy and become an actually engaged parent like your wife is. To be fair, a lot of kids around that age have to get ready on their own because their parents already left for work. I was one of them, and it was pretty normal in my social circles, and now I'm a teacher, and I know this from a lot of students. From when I was 8, my parents left at 4:45 and 6:30 for work, and I had to get up and get ready on my own. My mother called every morning at 7:15 to check in with me though. But if my parents would have been home and decided to sleep in instead of getting up with me, I 100% would have felt neglected. Where on earth would that be acceptable behavior from a parent? Wow, OP is completely out of touch with reality. You're an engaged and active parent? You don't sound like it. There are things a parent has to do for their kids in the mornings. Your youngest is 8. Cereal is nothing but sugar. A lot of moms don't want their kids to eat that every day. 2 hours of screen time is generous, not strict. You sound rather checked out. You're the jerk. This is how this reads. My wife is a hands-on, active parent who wants our kids to have well-balanced meals, minimal screen time, and fun and stimulating outings, and that's too much work for me. I'd prefer my kids eat whatever they can find in the kitchen without bothering me, that we stay home and do nothing and the kids play on their devices and watch TV in their spare time. No wonder she's stressed. She sounds like a great parent, and you come off sounding lazy and disinterested in parenting your own kids. You're the jerk. Not the jerk. She sounds like the kind of person who loves to make things difficult and unnecessary. That's how my mother always was, and none of us could stand her. Growing up, we always wished our parents would have divorced and we could have gone with our dad. Life would have been so much more simple without my mother, who always insisted on things being done her way, her rules, her regulations. She's no longer with us, but even at her funeral, all anybody talked about was how bossy and controlling she was. I can't tell you what to do, OP, but if you want your kids to have actual childhoods without a dictator, you really might want to leave your wife. Some people create endless problems, then complain about them, and that's exactly what she's doing. She sounds so exhausting. My girlfriend thinks it's weird for her to pay me rent. My girlfriend, 29 female, and I, 27 male, have been together for about 5 years. For the first year and a half of our relationship, she lived at home with her parents, but spent most nights at the place I was renting at the time. In March 2020, I bought a house and she moved in with me. Until recently, I hadn't asked her to contribute much to household expenses because when she moved in, she was working part-time and simultaneously working on a master's degree and a professional certificate. I've been paying for all of the utilities as well as her car insurance and most of our groceries. A few days ago, I asked her to start paying for her share of the utilities and $500 a month towards the house. She didn't have any issue with paying towards the utilities, but she said it was weird of me to ask her to pay rent since it was my house and I would essentially be profiting off her payment. Eventually, she agreed to start paying me, but it seemed to be under protest. I think $500 is very reasonable, and I don't see how it's a weird request. It doesn't even cover half of the interest I pay each month on the mortgage. Some additional info. I make $140K each year, and she recently started making $40K. She's working on paying off student loans, but is going to have low monthly payments thanks to income-based repayment. My mortgage payment is $2,400 a month. Combined utilities are around $500 a month. We live in a high cost of living area. The home is a modest starter home. A decent apartment in the area would easily cost as much as my mortgage. I don't need the money, but it's important to me that I feel like we're both contributing towards the household expenses where we can. We do plan on getting married. We don't plan on having kids. We split the chores somewhat evenly. She definitely does more than I do since she has more time to spend at home, but I'd call it a 60-40 split. So, is it weird that I ask my girlfriend to pay me $500 in rent each month? It's pretty reasonable to ask her to pay rent, but if you want her to pay rent, you need to have a lease in place to protect both of you should your relationship end suddenly. You might also want to consider splitting the cost based on income percentage as opposed to a random number or 50-50 because there's such a large discrepancy between y'all's income and since you chose the area and size of the home that y'all are living in. If you're going to ask her to contribute to the house, she should benefit from that arrangement with a formal rent agreement that allows her to establish and keep a rental history in case y'all weren't to work out as a romantic partnership. I feel like instead of charging her rent, you should ask her to start paying for her own expenses, such as her car insurance and half the groceries and utilities. If she feels weird paying you directly, you could ask her to put the utilities in her name and pay them directly. That's what we do. My husband pays the mortgage, cable, and phones. I pay electric, gas, trash, and buy all groceries and household goods. His income is way higher than mine, so I pay what I can in order to contribute. It's not weird at all to ask for contribution to the household expenses. She lives there. $500 would not cover living almost anywhere these days. I wonder if she's saying that it's weird because she feels paying towards your mortgage is just giving you money for equity while not building any herself. She may be worried that if you broke up, all that time and money would have benefited her zero in terms of ownership. I know she could be renting and it would be the same, but maybe it's that she knows you versus a third party or a stranger. Or she could feel weird like it's a landlord-tenant relationship. However, I don't think you're taking advantage of her or unfair for her to pay rent. I think if you're renting, not building your own equity is pretty much the deal. Am I the jerk for giving my son non-vegan food behind my wife's back? I, 32 male, and my wife, 33 female. We've been married for 8 years and we have a 12-year-old son together. About 6 years ago, my wife decided to go vegan. She watched a documentary that a friend sent to her and ever since then has said non-vegan food is revolting and refuses to eat it. After a long conversation, I agreed to go vegetarian and be vegan in the house and around her, but she was happy with it. She also decided our son should be vegan, which after seeing a dietitian, I also agreed with. Things have been fine with this arrangement until a few months ago when I began finding wrappers from non-vegan candy and even burgers from McDonald's in my son's school bag, which he had been buying with chore money. I had a conversation with my son, and he confessed he felt lonely and excluded eating vegan around his friends, and that they always had much better candy than he did, and it wasn't fair. I decided I didn't want him spending his pocket money on snacks and throwing out the vegan snacks we actually bought him instead of buying games, etc. It made no sense, but I also know the way my wife feels about non-vegan products. So I began buying my son what he wanted on our way to football practice instead. Long story short, my wife recently found out what's been going on and completely flipped out. She called me an animal mistreatment enabler and a few other names and said that I was corrupting our son. Now she's not speaking to me. Our son panicked and told her I had bought the snacks for him and he didn't know that they weren't vegan. I don't blame him for that. He just doesn't want to be in trouble with his mom. Am I the jerk here? Not the jerk. I think that my answer at this point would be, our son is old enough to decide what he wants to eat and what his dietary preferences are. If we put him into a situation where he feels he has to hide things from us, that's on us. If your wife is confronting him about this in any kind of intimidating way or trying to make him feel guilty with the same phrases she's using with you, I would prioritize your son and his needs and well-being. Crap like this can cause a lot of problems. As a vegan, not the jerk. We humans are designed to eat meat. It's a perfectly normal thing for our bodies to do. In fact, I'm the abnormal one, not eating meat. I'm old enough to have made that choice and I'm happy. Your son shouldn't have his dietary preferences forced on him like this, when building bonds is so important. It's his choice what he gets to eat, and you're doing nothing wrong supporting him. Not the jerk. My spoiled daughter keeps taking the car without permission, so I put a tracker on it. I have a daughter who is 15 years old and recently got her instruction/learner's permit after she took a summer driver's ed course and passed the written exam. In my state, the learner's permit has a driving restriction that requires the driver to have a licensed adult who's 21 or older in the front passenger seat with them at all times, no exceptions. She has to hold the learner's permit for at least 1 year before she can move up to a restricted license at 16 years old. We bought her a car during the summer so that she can have a familiar car to practice in with us while having her learner's permit. This will be the same car she will use once she gets her license. The problem is that she's been driving this car by herself without our permission or even informing us. Sometimes we leave our daughter home alone for a few hours so that we can go to the store or on a date, etc. And she's been secretly driving when we're not home. She has her own key and we have the spare. I found out after noticing the discrepancy in the miles in her car. We scolded her and told her that it was illegal for her to drive on her own, and we started outlining the tires with chalk so that we would know if she used the car or not. However, the chalk does not automatically stop her from taking the car out. It only lets us know afterwards if she did. So she still kept using the car and would shrug us off afterwards. I don't want her breaking the law, and I'm terrified of her driving on her own with so little experience, although she seems to be doing fine as the car has no damage. So I secretly installed a GPS tracking device in the car. We then secretly pretended to leave and waited until we noticed that the car's location changed. I immediately called my daughter and yelled at her, telling her that she needed to come home now. She came back and we got into a huge fight, screaming, and it ended up in tears. She screamed that I was a controlling mother and was invading her privacy, and that this was her car since we bought it for her, so we had no right to secretly install the tracker without her permission. I talked to someone else about it, and they did say I took the wrong approach, and that it was wrong of me to install the tracker, and that I should have done something else. I would have taken the key back, but she refuses to give it to me, and I don't know where she keeps it. Am I the jerk for secretly installing a GPS tracker in my daughter's car? Edit. I do plan to remove the tracker once she gets her license. It's only while she has her learner's permit. Edit 2. Update. We drove the car to a local Walmart because I saw they're pretty friendly with truckers and van dwellers, so I figured that they wouldn't mind a car left overnight. We don't have anyone who lives nearby that we can keep the car at. I called an auto locksmith and they said that the earliest they can come out is tomorrow afternoon, so we're waiting on that. There's a lot of people who ask the same questions and I can't respond to everyone, so I'm just going to answer them here. Why did you buy her a car in the first place? I wanted her to be able to practice driving for her license in a car that would be familiar even after she got her license. That way, she would feel more confident since she knows the car, where everything is, etc. Driving is scary, so I wanted it to be a really smooth transition from her learners to her license. This is also why we didn't think to sell the car either, since we wanted to keep it for this reason. I told my husband about selling the car, and he said he would think about it. He was the one who paid for it. Why did you give her a key in the first place? My parents bought me a car when I was 14 and had my learner's permit also. They immediately gave me a key to it, and I never once drove the car without their permission despite always having the key. I thought my daughter would do the same thing. I've raised her almost exactly how my parents raised me, so I thought she'd act the same way as I did in the same situation. Why haven't you taken the key? I've told her to give it back to me, but she refuses, and even when I searched her room, I was unable to find it. Why haven't you done anything to punish her? I already told her she was grounded a long time ago, and she does not get to use a smartphone. She still has a flip phone. I don't want to completely take away a phone because I still want her to be able to contact me in case of emergency, but has unrestricted access to her laptop because her homework is posted and submitted online. Why haven't you disabled the car? To be honest, both me and my husband don't know much about cars, so this didn't even occur to us to try. I'd never even heard of a steering wheel club before. We're the type of people who bring our car into the shop for any maintenance, so I didn't know how to disable the car, so the idea of removing parts of the car and such never occurred to us. Why did you think the chalk and tracker would work? Honestly, just because it would have worked on me when I was a teen. I didn't like upsetting my parents, so I never did things like this, and small minor punishments really quickly put me in my place growing up whenever I did misbehave. I thought the tracker was more serious than the chalk because it meant that I would find out she took the car almost immediately before she got too far. Take the keys from her. It's really as simple as that. But a GPS does not prevent your daughter's bad and dangerous behavior. Why does she still have unrestricted access to the keys? So I guess you're the jerk for not preventing your 15-year-old from endangering innocent motorists. Honestly, I would sell the car. Your daughter is a spoiled brat. You might have to knock a couple hundred off the sale price since you only have one key. You're the jerk. Take the darn keys already. Good grief. Tracking her does nothing to prevent her from getting into an accident. You bought her a car, but I'm guessing it's in your name and you're the one paying on the insurance. Be a parent, not a sneak. Take the keys to your office or someplace outside your home and lock them up. A no-car diet should start immediately for her. Well, what would you do in this situation? How would you try to get the keys from your daughter? Please let us know. Just another example of why I'm so glad we don't have kids, Reddit boy. Karen keeps eating my microwave dinners and I've had enough. About 6 weeks ago, I, 21 female, moved in with my friend John, who's 22 male. John and I have been very good friends for almost 2 years now after I befriended him at work. 6 months ago, he met this girl, Kat, who's 19. He told me about her the day after he matched with her on a dating app and took me to her workplace to meet her. She seemed very lovely and I was so happy for him. Since then, John is always inviting her to every friend outing, so I got to know her. We have lots in common, and for John's sake, I wanted to be her friend. However, I think that, in the nicest way possible, she's a bit rude. She does art, and half the time John compliments her work, she says, "You hate it, don't you?" Or times we hang out with other friends, we've had to go home early as she was bored, and John was our ride home. She hasn't done anything to me personally, but I just don't like her much. I'm happy John has found someone who he cares for, but having to stand by and watch how she acts sometimes rubs me the wrong way. Here's where the issue comes in. Yesterday, John and I were at the supermarket to do our food shop. Normally, we would buy our food for the week and maybe a couple of simple or frozen meals to save for Sunday. However, Kat has been coming over for dinners a few times a week and she has a very limited diet. She refuses to eat anything other than fast food or simple or frozen meals. She likely has her reasons for eating specific food, and in case it's due to an ED or something similar, I don't want to make things hard for her or pry into something that isn't my business. The time where it became an issue for me is how John has now wanted to buy backup meals for her in case she doesn't like what we're cooking. This would make sense, as before she has been eating stuff that was part of our weekly meal plan. The problem is, John wants me to financially contribute to these extra meals for her. When I spoke to John about this and said how I'm not happy paying half for her meals, our weekly shop cost is just split in half as we both eat everything, he got quite agitated. He called me selfish for not wanting to help her just to save money. I know frozen meals aren't the most expensive thing in the world, but John is in a much better financial situation than I am. And while I can pay my share of the bills and occasionally have outings with my friends, I don't want to be dishing out extra money for meals for a girl I have no real connection to, as these small amounts do add up. In my eyes, if Kat doesn't like what we're cooking, she could come over on a different day, or John could buy backup meals for her out of his own pocket. I feel like a jerk, but I don't think I should be paying for an extra person's food. If my boyfriend had a similar situation to Kat, I'd see it as my responsibility to provide for him and his diet, and I'd never expect John to pay. Am I the jerk for thinking this way? Do any of you have any advice? Not the jerk, but it's time to take a financial and social step back from John as he navigates his new relationship. He can't expect you to help finance the fact that his girlfriend eats like a kid and needs backup meals. That's their expense alone, and perhaps separate shopping is now in order as you two no longer have the same joint priorities. On the flip side, I also wouldn't continue to rely on John as a ride if you constantly want to stay out with friends later. It honestly sounds like your life paths are just splitting at this time, and it's best to acknowledge that and adjust expectations of each other accordingly before bitterness sets in. I'd also get ahead of any rent or living concerns sooner rather than later. If she's sticking around, it may be time to start planning an exit strategy. Nanny bought books for my daughter and expects me to pay her for them. My daughter Ruby is 12. Recently, she's gotten into the original Star Trek show, as well as The Next Generation. Ruby is also a big reader and has started to collect a few of the old Star Trek books that she finds in used bookstores and thrift stores. These books usually cost anywhere from 50 cents to a couple of dollars. My nanny, Tessa, who's 22, hangs out with Ruby most days after she gets out of school. Tessa has been our nanny for over a year now, and she and Ruby get along great. Tessa is big into thrifting and will often keep an eye out for the books that Ruby wants. This is not typically a problem, and Ruby always pays Tessa back for the books using her allowance. The problem occurred when Tessa went on a family vacation out west. Apparently, she went thrifting during this trip, found some books for Ruby. She texted Ruby asking her if she wanted the books, and Ruby said yes. Well, Tessa returned yesterday with a stack of about 35 books and told Ruby they cost $50. Ruby doesn't have this much money and told Tessa. Tessa then asked me if I would cover the cost. I said no, as Tessa had never even asked me about buying Ruby the books, nor was I aware of the conversation between the two of them. Tessa got upset, and I asked Ruby to show me the text, which made no mention of price or even the amount of books she was buying. Tessa only said that she found some books for Ruby. Ruby is on the spectrum and does not read between the lines. You have to be very literal with her. Previously, Tessa has never bought Ruby more than 1 or 2 books at a time, so I told her that she should have clarified with Ruby regarding the amount, or double-checked with me before purchasing, and that I would not be paying the $50. Tessa said she could not return the books because they came from the thrift store. I stood firm in my decision and reiterated that she should have asked me first. Tessa left, and Ruby is very upset. I know Tessa is a student and does not have a ton of money, so am I the jerk for not paying Tessa for the books? Edit, because some people are asking. I am a single parent to Ruby, and while $50 will not make or break the bank, it is definitely an unexpected expense. I provide Tessa with an extra amount of money each month to spend on whatever she wants to do with Ruby, movies, the mall, etc. If she wanted to spend this fund on books for Ruby, that would have been totally fine, but she had already used it up. Edit 2. I definitely didn't expect this post to blow up overnight, so I'm going to add a bit more context. For those of you who are asking how can I afford a nanny for Ruby and still have $50 be a large unexpected expense, I do not pay for Tessa's services. Because Ruby is on the spectrum, she is entitled to benefits from our state, including care. The agency I work with pays Tessa. I'm not involved in that process at all. Update. I appreciate everyone's input. I've seen a few comments hinting to me about the fact that I don't support my daughter's reading habit. Please know this is definitely not the case. We're both big readers and frequent patrons of our local library. I'm always supportive of Ruby getting new books. I talked to Tessa and told her that I appreciate her for thinking of Ruby, apologized for the misunderstanding, and I have paid her for the books. We had a chat about expectations in the future, and I don't think this will happen again. I've also talked to Ruby, and we agreed that I would hold on to the books and she would pay me for them as she wishes. It's important to me that Ruby learns how to handle her finances appropriately, and we've decided that she will get 2 new books every week. She reads very quickly. After reading through your perspectives on the matter, I agree that it is better in the long run to lose the money and salvage the relationship between the 3 of us, and had not considered all of the implications of doing otherwise. Lesson learned. Sometimes it's better to salvage an important relationship than to be right. Pay for the books. Let Tessa know that you can't do so in the future though, without talking about it. Tell her how much you appreciate her thoughtfulness now and always. My Karen daughter demands my $2,000 mattress. My partner, 59 male, and I, 53 female, have a 4-bedroom house, and one of his kids, 25-year-old daughter, is still living at home. She's about to move out, and she's been searching for nearby apartments. While she's been looking at unfurnished options, since there aren't any furnished apartments available, we haven't had any discussion about what items she might take from the house. Recently, she applied for an apartment she thought would work for her. On the way back home, she brought up the idea of taking some things from the bedroom upstairs, including a very expensive mattress that was a gift from someone my partner used to work for. She's hesitant to buy a new mattress because she's uncertain about her plans for the coming year. I initially declined her request, explaining that moving such a large and valuable mattress up and down the stairs could damage it. I suggested an alternative mattress from a different bed, which would be easier to move, but she found it uncomfortable. I must admit, it's not in the best condition, as she has used it for several years. To find a compromise, I proposed buying a new mattress that she could use for her new place. If she decides she doesn't want it later, we could use it as a replacement for the uncomfortable one. Or if she decides to keep it, she could purchase it from us. I even mentioned that I'd probably waive the cost if it came down to that, but I wanted to set realistic expectations. However, she remains insistent on having the expensive mattress and doesn't understand why I won't just give it to her. Am I being unreasonable for wanting to keep a nice mattress for our spare bed? She was offered a new mattress at the inn for free and refused because she wants the expensive one. Not the jerk. I don't agree with all the comments saying she should have let her have the mattress. If it was my expensive mattress and my daughter asked for it, then I'd probably say no as well, and I'm very generous with my daughter. OP has offered to pay for a decent mattress for her. It's not like she's refusing to help at all. The only difference I'd make here would be that I'd say I'd gift her the new one. Not the jerk. So you'd rather have the nice mattress in an empty room that someone may stay in every once in a while than your stepdaughter who's starting her adult life and would be benefiting from it daily? You're the jerk. If nobody's using it and the daughter has been, it's her bed. Why would you not let her take it? The excuse that it might get damaged is absurd. This isn't about being entitled. When all 3 of my kids moved out, they took whatever they wanted from their rooms. I wonder what your response would be if she were your daughter and not your stepdaughter. My husband is angry that I won't give him my student loan refund to help with bills. I'm a stay-at-home mom and receive $500 bi-weekly from my husband's paychecks to pay for things like our son's preschool, gas for the car, groceries, things the kids need, etc. My husband makes somewhere around $4,500 per month, but I'm not sure because he won't tell me for sure what he brings in. I'm in school, and for the last 2 years, I've been maxing out my student loans so that I can supplement my income, because what I get from my husband is not enough to last the month. I do not ask my husband for additional money. I do not use any of his credit cards, and I very minimally use Amazon or shop online. My husband knows that I have to supplement with my student loan refunds and will occasionally ask me if I need him to give me more money, but I always tell him no, things are tight, but I make it work. We're in the process of switching over our medical insurance to my husband's work insurance, which will cost more than what we currently pay. My husband told me yesterday that he thinks it would be a good idea to give him my student loan refund so he can use it on bills for the rest of the year until I get another check. I didn't respond to him out of shock. He brought it up again later, and I told him that I didn't feel that I could talk about it right then because I didn't want to end up in a fight. He kept pushing me about it, and I told him that I wasn't going to give him the money. He got angry, and he's now ignoring me. The reason I don't want to give him the money is because I know it won't go to bills. He has packages coming in the mail from all sorts of websites almost every day. He spent almost $900 on Amazon in the span of 30 days. He gets fast food all the time. Anytime I ever try to talk to him about this spending, he tells me that he busts his butt for that money, and since he knows how much money we have, it isn't any of my business what he buys. He told me if I don't give him the money, he's going to lower the amount he gives me from his paychecks. He doesn't give me access to any of the online banking at all, but one bank account is solely in his name. I also have no idea what any of our bills are. I'm not asking for financial advice. I know our marriage isn't healthy, and we've discussed divorcing recently. When we discuss divorce, he gets angry. He cuts off the direct deposits, shuts my phone off, takes the car, and more until I tell him sorry and that I won't divorce him. I don't think that I'm wrong for saying no until he stops his excessive spending. ETA. I was able to access his email via his iPad. All apps are locked down with his fingerprint, so I can't check banking apps and things like that. I've gathered that he has at least 8 credit cards. Only 2 of those cards show me the remaining balances on them. Between those 2 cards, it's $13,000. I was also able to see our mortgage and monthly bill amounts. I can also see some of the banking statements emails from different accounts that he has. I can see 4 different bank accounts, but I can't access the actual statements without the passwords. I've made notes of all of this. From what I can see about our monthly bills, the total is about $2,000. This doesn't include the payments that he's making on the credit cards each month. I want to say thank you to so many kind commenters who are understanding of the position I've fallen into. Tomorrow I'll be going to the courthouse for divorce paperwork, and I will be figuring out the lawyer situation. See an attorney immediately. Never mention divorce again, and quietly plan your escape. Neighbor of property I work at tries to get free service. I own a small landscaping business with my husband. This morning, we showed up to our job with our truck and trailer for a day of weeding at a long-neglected property. It's trash day in the neighborhood, and in order to back the trailer in, I have to get out of the truck to move 2 garbage cans that are in the way. I move them both 1 foot off the road with the intention of moving them back afterwards. I assumed they were out in the road for visibility purposes. I then move to behind the trailer and guide my husband into the parking spot. It's very narrow. Husband gets out of the truck and we both look at the ocean as the waves are massive due to the impending storm, at least 10 feet high. Surfers are wiping out all over the place, and it's quite a sight. I counted over 60 surfers on my lunch break. 10 seconds into looking at the ocean, the neighbor comes out screaming at us about how the garbage truck driver can't see the cans and asked what I was doing. When I say he was screaming, I mean he was screaming. This guy chose violence and was looking to intimidate. I calmly responded that I was about to move the cans back. I was just looking at the ocean first. He seemed slightly embarrassed and muttered something like, "I'll move them, don't bother." 1 hour later, this guy catches my husband going to the truck and asks if he can put his lawn clippings in our trailer and take them to the dump with our other debris. No apology, no introductions, and like nothing had happened. My husband was taken aback in the moment and said yes, even though this is something we charge for. 30 minutes after that, he walks onto the property we're working at and says that he just pruned a juniper and asks if he can put those clippings in there too. I respond, "Sure, if you throw us a 20. He laughs and says, "Are you kidding? You're going to the dump anyway, right?" To which I respond, "Yes, and not only do they charge us by weight, but this is our job, and taking debris to the dump is a service we offer. We'll do it for 20. He laughs again and says, "They charge by weight? My debris weighs nothing." He huffs off and comes back with the $20. He was so mad, he wouldn't even look at me when he handed me the money. My guess, he thought we'd just say yes, and he'd already cut the juniper before asking. Then didn't have a way of getting rid of it. Couldn't put it in one of his 2 BMWs and didn't want it laying around his $4 million beach house. Another short while later, he catches my husband and tries to find out which dump we go to, because the one he suspects we go to doesn't charge by weight. Wrong dump. And also, it doesn't matter. We charge what we charge. My guy, you don't have to say yes to us taking your debris. We decide our rates, and this is what we charge. Take it or leave it. You came to us. We're not going door to door asking for people's yard clippings. There's a minimum charge of $25 at the dump, no matter how much you have. Just save the $5 and the trip to the dump and leave us alone. Give me a parking ticket for a spot I paid for? I dare you. About 10 or so years ago, I went to a concert an hour away from me in Indianapolis. Decided to make a day of it, going to several museums and spots around the city. Each time paying for parking in a garage for 2 or so hours, then going to meander around the area. Finally, I go park close to the venue and paid for parking until the time it was free. In total, I probably paid $40 to $50 for parking throughout the day. Enjoyed the concert, but come back to a parking ticket on my car. I think this is odd, but I'm tired and chalk it up to a mistake. But I decide to take photos of my parking spot. Both spots on either side were taken, and all the signage, and head home for the evening, figuring I would sort it out in the morning. The next morning, I review the ticket, the photo of my spot, and my parking receipt. The ticket did not line up to the spot my car was located in, and my receipt shows that I had valid parking at the time of the ticket. So I submit an appeal, thinking this will be easy. It's obviously a mistake. The appeal was denied. The ticket was for the spot that was not paid for, ergo it stood. I called the office, and the lady said they did not make a mistake, as my receipt showed that I paid for spot X1 and the ticket was for spot X. I asked about the photo proof that my car was in spot X1. She said, "Well, you could have moved the car." Note that the parking receipt included my license plate number and everything. I noticed that there were cars in spots on either side of me and that the entire street was full because of the concert. And honestly, I don't think they bothered to look at the photo. Even had that not been the case, I had proof that my license plate had a paid parking spot. No matter what, no dice. I'm feeling petty over this $25 parking ticket at this point, so I called Visa and asked if I could retract the amount I paid for the time that I had parked since it didn't count. I submitted all the evidence and documentation to Visa. Visa, and what was the greatest thing Visa has ever done in my opinion, they agreed that if my parking receipt and transaction number wasn't proof I had paid for parking, then clearly I had paid for a service I did not receive, and they extended my initial request of canceling the one transaction to include all of the parking spots I had paid for throughout the system that day, valued at more than the parking ticket. Then they filed a formal complaint on my behalf with a letter explaining why they were refunding me. It would not have been nearly as satisfying if I had not spent the entire day playing tourist in the city and racking up a large parking bill all with the same vendor. Being complicated isn't cute or funny, it's straight up annoying. I had a group of 3 come in, older ladies, maybe in their 60s. I greeted them and asked what they wanted to drink, put in apps, and everything seemed to go well. Then I get their food order. First lady orders something regular. Second asks for a change on the kind of waffle she was having. No problem. The third, she asked me if she could make her own omelet. Her friends were already joking about how she's difficult and she can't even order off fast food menus without changing something. I laughed and told her no, that she had to pick one of the three, cheese, veggie, or seafood, and she could add a breakfast meat or something. She quickly corrected me and said that that was the same thing. She proceeded to ask for a veggie, no onions, bell peppers, or tomatoes, leaving her with just spinach, and then tells me to add bacon and pico. I told her pico had tomatoes and onions and asked was she sure. She said she just didn't want it too tomatoey or oniony and that pico was fine. I said okay and put it in. She kept making jokes about how she's picky and this is typical of her and she's so quirky. They proceed to run me around. Napkins, a new drink, want to change drink, second person now wants to change drink, salt and pepper before food arrives, etc. And then when I finally get them settled, their food comes out. They ask me for a pat of butter, salsa, salt and pepper. Yes, again, they told me they were done. And some pancake syrup. In the midst of getting all these things, fourth person shows up and I asked what she wanted to drink. She tells me her friends need pancake syrup. I said I was already going to get it, but I was just trying to get her something to drink. She gives me her drink order with an attitude. They then have a fifth friend show up. They asked to put tables together and we said no, but offered a 5-top instead. When the woman gets there, they try to pull up a chair even though we already told them they'd have to move. They begrudgingly move and leave their old table in a mess, which I go to clean right as the fifth person sits down. As soon as she sits, her friend calls me and says she's ready to order. With dishes clearly in my hand, I tell her to give me a minute. I come back, ask her what she wants to drink, and she says, "No, I'm ready to order." I said, "Well, I need to ring in your drink too, so will you tell me what you want to drink and then what you want to eat?" She gives in. I go to check on her after she gets her food and say, "Did you get everything? Does it look all right?" She gestures to the food and rolls her eyes. This entire time, they're joking about how they are all difficult and picky, especially the omelet lady. When it was time to pay, the fifth lady paid for everyone and left a $3 tip on $97 bill. Worst part is, they caught my manager and asked was I new because they felt like they had to ask for everything. I wanted to scream. The only reason why you had to ask was A, you kept changing your drink and adding people, and B, because you never let me get a chance to grab it. It's not cute to go out and be difficult or purposefully picky. I have no issue with accommodation, but it truly felt like a game to them, and it was so frustrating. Management was not ready for my compliance. About 20 years ago, I worked in a call center at a budding payment processing company. The main performance metric was the time service factor, TSF, which required answering 80% of calls within 20 seconds. Due to a constant queue of calls, achieving this goal was impossible. Customers were unhappy, management was unhappy, the stage was set. Enter tech support. I was hired fresh out of high school to be the call center's sole tech support and handle customer-facing application migrations. In retrospect, they basically brought me on as a project manager and systems consultant, but I didn't know any better. Unfortunately, our telephone system did not direct callers based on specialization and skill sets, so when customers called in specifically for tech support, there was a 1 in 15 chance of getting the lone tech support agent. Instead of investing in more tech support staff and overhauling the phone system, management decided the best system was to have representatives physically line up at my desk. It was frustrating and extremely overwhelming to balance my migration projects and the queue of callers that were waiting for me. So I adapted by remaining in not ready as much as possible. Not ready means your line will only ring for direct calls, but only my team had direct line. Things were going smoother in terms of handling tech calls. People were lining up less, but management was not happy that the TSF goal was not being met. Then one day, my lead pulled me aside and confronted me with my telephone stats. My not ready times were 10x everyone else's, to which I reminded them that I'm the only technician, and if 14 other people were lined up at my cubicle, then they're clogging the lines with people on hold waiting for me. Management did not care. I had a special skill, but I was not special enough to be exempt from the metric. No more not ready. Cue malicious compliance. I pretended my not ready button no longer existed and went about being a rank and file call center rep. The moment I was done with one call, I had to pick up the next. This meant during migration waves and outages, there were moments where my entire team was lined up at my desk waiting to transfer their callers to me. After about 10 to 15 minutes of just seething by my cubicle's window, some began to confront me. I explained that I was forbidden from using "not ready" to keep my line open. The call queue would have to die down completely until my line was open to accept a transfer call. You could cut the tension with a knife. TSF continued to tank, then call abandon rate skyrocketed. Customers were unhappy, management was unhappy. So management did the obvious thing and hired more technicians, right? Nope. First, the new protocol was to post a sticky note with the customer's callback number and ticket number on my desk. Tell the customer to expect my callback, hang up, then take the next call. From then on, I was expressly only allowed to conduct the callbacks when there were fewer than 10 callers on hold. Second, they took 2 of the regular call center boomers and sat them with me to job shadow. Third, they tasked my lead with standing over my shoulder to observe my daily activities. What I showed the team lead was that for every 2 to 3 tickets I closed out, 10 more callback tickets would roll in. What he actually ended up doing was reprimanding me for having a high RONA, rollover not answered, count, because I'd let some calls roll over if they snuck in while I was doing morning callbacks. The nightmare finally ended with the mortgage crisis. Management's brilliant business ideas had led the company to insolvency. I jumped ship to complete my college education, then the company shut down about a year later. Would I be the jerk to not let my best friend move in with me after she, her boyfriend, and 4 kids got evicted? I'm 42. My BFF, who's 41, lives with her boyfriend and her 4 kids, who are 20, 17, 13, and 6, in a small 3-bedroom house. Her boyfriend is rather lazy and does the bare minimum. Basically works 30 hours a week and sleeps or plays on his phone the rest of the time. Any home or car maintenance is usually done by myself or my husband. My BFF also works about 30 hours a week but does all the housework and childcare. They were both laid off during lockdown and didn't pay any rent or put anything aside from stimulus money. Rather, they spent it on frivolous items. Well, once things started getting back to normal again, they started paying rent but kind of ignored the 16 months they didn't pay. Again, spending whatever extra they had on unnecessary stuff. Well, she recently got a letter of eviction, giving her until the 15th of next month to vacate. Both my husband and myself have encouraged her to talk with landlord, seek help from family, talk with the county, and even talk to legal aid. She has done none of this and instead decided to drink and bury her head in the sand. Now she has mentioned moving in with me and my family, my husband, our daughter, and our son. As much as I'd love to help her out, I just can't. I'm a neat freak. She's not. My kids attend school regularly. Hers miss a lot. My 17-year-old works a lot on top of school. Her 20-year-old lays in bed all day doing nothing but smoking and having guys over. Lastly, she has lots of pets, and I mean lots. 13 dogs and 14 cats. I have my own hobby farm, but they are well kept after and cleaned up after. Hers are not as much, and there's often messes around her house. So, would I be the jerk to leave her, her family, and her pets to be homeless? I've offered to go with her to talk to organizations, but again, she's just ignoring it all. Wow, not the jerk. It's hard to see a scenario where your BFF is not trying to take advantage of you. Her life seems to be a mess of her own making, and she's not doing anything to make her situation better except asking others for freebies. For better or worse, I commend you for sticking by your BFF for as long as you have. Not the jerk. She's deeply irresponsible, and it shouldn't be you who deals with those consequences. She has options, she's just choosing the easiest one for her. Even just the humans moving in would be insane, and I want to bet you'd end up doing the chores along with your husband without help from anyone else. Also, 13 dogs and 14 cats in a small apartment? That's insane. You can't let this person encroach in your life any more than she already has. Her suggestion to move in with you under this circumstance, when it's not even the last resort, is selfish. Am I the jerk for literally showing my dad how he behaves every day when he gets home from work? I'm 16, female. My father, who's 46, is the breadwinner, while my mom is a stay-at-home mom. She handles everything around the house, like cooking, mopping, washing, laundry, etc. I'm the oldest and I try to help, but really there's only so much I can do while my dad just gets home at the end of the day and literally complains about everything, like how the carpet isn't clean or how the food is cold. As a result, I'd have to listen to a huge argument daily between him and mom. It's exhausting, but honestly, I think that my dad is in the wrong here. I tried talking to him to get him to see how his behavior is, but to no avail. So what I did was pick a day off for him and pretended to act like him. I put together an outfit that looked like a suit and put black tape over my lips to look like a mustache. At 6 p.m., I went inside the house, shouted, "I'm home!" then sat next to him in the living room and started kicking my shoes off while complaining about the state of the house at the top of my lungs. He glanced at me, confused, asking what I was doing. I ignored him, then started yelling about the carpet being dirty, shower not ready, the kids needing to be quiet, and so on. He kept staring while Mom and my siblings laughed. My younger brother kept pointing towards me, saying, "This is Daddy." I then proceeded to yell about dinner, then went off on my mom for not preparing it before time. My dad stopped me and in a serious tone asked what I was doing. I turned to him and said, "What? Can't a man rest after working long hours?" in the most macho voice I could muster. My dad got the hint because this was the common phrase he uses daily. He went quiet and avoided looking at me. I stopped the act and told him I was just trying to show him what he's like every day when he comes home from work. He said nothing, just went outside and refused to speak to me. Later, he went on about how I mocked and invalidated him, that he does work hard, and me doing this was disrespectful and invalidating. Mom said it was funny, but also thought I hurt my dad's feelings, and I could have gotten the message across some other way instead. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. You held up a mirror to his behavior and he didn't like what he saw. That's on him. I hope he gets the message. Not the jerk, first off, but I think you have a good chance here. Listen, please. You can acknowledge, "Hey, Dad, I know that probably did hurt your feelings and I'm sorry. Of course you work hard and provide for us and we appreciate it. But I want you to see that your behavior hurts Mom's feelings. It hurts the family." The fact he went quiet instead of exploding in anger, to me says there's hope. Like many dudes his age, he struggles to process those emotions, but he recognized he was feeling more embarrassed and hurt than angry, it seems. The key is to understand and withhold judgment, to recenter the convo on not just his pain, but everyone's feeling pain and moving forward. That's tough, and you're a kid. It's not your responsibility to do it. You would be morally justified to say buzz off, but I always ask, do you want to win or be right? Being right often feels hollow. I hope you win. I just want to hop onto this excellent comment to add that I would also recommend you having a private chat with your mom. Explain to her that me acting like Dad wasn't just about pointing out his bad behavior towards you. I also wanted to point out how your marriage affects the whole family. The daily fights and Dad's yelling affects everyone. We all feel it when it gets to the time Dad is due home and we prepare to listen to our dad to be mean to our mom. It affects all of us knowing our dad doesn't respect our mom. Every day we all watch your hard work. We've started trying to help you out because we know our dad doesn't appreciate or respect the hard work you do. It's so bad that younger brother recognized I was pretending to be Dad so quickly, yet Dad didn't know what I was doing until the last minute. But what affects me the most is knowing that despite all this, you always put Dad's feelings first, before your own and before everyone else's. Even now, you're more concerned with how what I did hurt Dad's feelings than you're concerned by how Dad's behavior affects the rest of the family. Brother strongly associates that behavior with Dad, while Dad apparently has no idea he behaves like this, and your priority is me apologizing to Dad, not changing this dynamic between you and Dad, or asking Dad to apologize to us for making our atmosphere at home so awful every time he comes home from work. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or Dad? Please let us know. Company did over long-term employees, and my boss' act of revenge helped me start a company for pennies on the dollar. For legal reasons, I can't disclose the exact location, purely because the team I worked with were cool guys and our boss did over corporate really hard without them noticing. This took place in 2012. Part 1. The Fire Marshal. I worked at a smaller chain electronics store that sold top-of-the-line video cameras, PCs, cell phones, photo cameras, and this new thing called 4K televisions. For context, we were located at an expensive outlet mall. We were literally the only electronics store in the mall and the only place for 50 miles that sold high-end electronics. Logic dictates that this in itself would make our location prime real estate and we would have record sales every year. Spoiler alert, that's exactly what happened, and we basically did well 5 years in a row. Furthermore, I got hired because I came into the store looking for some video equipment. The store manager was caught off guard by my advanced technical knowledge of camera technology because I kept asking him specific technical questions on certain models. Note, this piece of information is relevant for the end of the story. So with that preamble out of the way, let's get into the heart of the story. While working the camera counter, the mall fire marshal came in and asked to see the store manager. Since I had no customers at that moment, I decided to take him to the back to meet my manager. This verbatim is what I can remember. Me: "Hey, the fire marshal's here." Manager: "Why?" Me: "Don't know. Want me to let him in your office?" Manager: "Sure, give me a moment." Marshal: "Okay, mall management wanted me to ask when you want me to bring in the construction foreman." Me: "What, are we building something?" Looking at my rather baffled boss. Manager: "No, I didn't ask for a construction foreman." Marshal: "Well, aren't you aware of the new, overpriced clothing store that's going to be built here?" At that exact moment, I and the store manager looked at each other, then looked at the fire marshal, who handed my manager the work order on the brand new, overpriced clothing store that was going to be built at our exact location, thus permanently ending the only high-end electronics store for miles around. Part 2. Money Talks. A few days later, the manager held a store meeting with me and the rest of the team. Prior to this meeting, the manager gave me permission to tell the rest of our 12-person team about the incident with the fire marshal. So the manager confronted corporate about what was going on, and after some skillful verbatim gymnastics, we got the whole story. Manager: "So I called corporate to ask what's happening, and I'll tell you straight. Overpriced clothing store has been trying for 10 years to get a spot at this outlet mall. They went to every store with a buyout offer for the storefront. The CEO of this electronic chain was approached by overpriced clothing store with a massive check in the millions to break our lease and hand over the storefront to them. We weren't supposed to know any of this. Corporate wanted us to be in the dark right up until the last day 2 weeks from today." Yep, everyone was upset. In fact, we were so angry that all of us did the absolute bare minimum. This included the manager. In 1 week, we tanked our own sales by 70%. Corporate freaked out and sent a hatchet man to talk to the store. This doofus was confused why we weren't giving it 110% and was surprised we got visibly angry when he informed us that we wouldn't be getting severance pay or a letter of recommendation. My manager very politely told him to leave and that he would take care of the situation himself. Part 3. Oops, my finger slipped. After the hatchet man was banished from our store, the manager took a close look at the management handbook and noticed a little snafu that was written in the book in regards to discretionary discounts. Mainly that the store manager has permission to discount any product in the store up to 90% off, and the offset of the cost will be absorbed at the end of the year discretionary cost analysis. Yes, you read that last sentence correctly, and the wonderful part of this story is that the store was being shut down by the end of February. So another store meeting was held. The manager told us that 2 days before our last day, we were having a secret 90% off sale just for the employees and their family. When I heard this, I asked the question everyone was thinking. Me: "So let me get this straight. This includes every single item in this store?" Manager: "Yup. In fact, what you guys can do is pick out everything you want now and set up a little pile in the back room. Make sure you guys label everything, and I'll include the premium service warranties for free." Well, I decided to do some shopping. Newfangled 240Hz 4K TV, 4K camera system, 3 5-hour spare batteries, SD cards, microphones, laptops, drives, tripods, all kinds of stuff. But wait, there's more. The manager told me I could have any of the HDMI and mini DisplayPort cables that are currently attached to the showroom TV and computer displays. On the day of the secret 90% off sale, we all showed up 2 hours early from the back entrance and bought our items. With tax, I paid about $1,153 for about $13,000 worth of brand new electronics, and in essence, gave me the necessary tools to start my own media business. As one final forget you to corporate, the manager gave all of us a phone number to a caseworker at the local unemployment office who was very sympathetic to our case. Part 4. I've never seen this man before in my life. Well, flash forward to March 2013, and I'm carefully navigating my freelance media company into a nice stream of steady work. I get an unknown phone call from a law firm representing the electronics company. Apparently, $400,000 worth of electronics were mistakenly sold at a 90% discount, and they wanted to know if I had any information on where I could find my manager. The following conversation is what I can recall to the best of my memory. Me: May I ask why you need to know this information? Law firm. Well, we believe that he woefully misused his discount privileges. Me. Okay, but could you answer a question for me first? Law firm. Sure. Me. Why did your client, the CEO of an electronic chain, take a multi-million-dollar check to break a lease on his own business and not properly inform the store staff of its impending closure? Dead silence. Me. Hello? Law firm. Sorry to bother you, sir. And that was it. The moral of the story, don't do over your employees. P.S. Boss, if you're reading this, take comfort in the fact that none of us have sold you out, and I hope you're living a wondrous life. Am I the jerk for refusing to take my daughter to my ex-husband's wedding? I'm 42, female. My ex-husband, who's 45, and I were together for 20 years. We had a beautiful daughter together, Jocelyn, who's 14. We got a divorce 5 years ago due to infidelity on his part. I was devastated. He was the love of my life, and he betrayed all of the trust and loyalty we had built up. To make matters worse, he ended up in a relationship with the woman he cheated on me with. They got engaged 1 year later and are set to be married in 2 weeks. Honestly, I still am heartbroken over my divorce. It's hurtful to me that we were together for 20 years and he could just go fall in love with someone else, as if I was nothing. However, Jocelyn was only 9 when we divorced, and he's a great father, so I would never want to come between their bond. Jocelyn loves his fiancé, as she's very sweet to her, but she doesn't know the reason why her dad and I divorced. I want to tell her when she's a bit older, and he doesn't want to tell her at all. Anyways, I compromised with him that Jocelyn could come to the wedding, but that he would have to provide the transportation to and from the wedding, as I want no part of it. I don't want to drop my daughter off at his wedding. I don't want to see all the decorations and the happy guests. It would just be too much for me. I didn't tell him all of that, obviously, but he agreed. Today he calls me and asks if he can ask for a huge favor. It turns out that his future in-laws are flying in the morning of the wedding and he has to go pick them up. Therefore, he can't pick up my daughter the day of and wanted to ask if I could take her. I said absolutely not and asked why he can't pick her up the day before when she gets off of school. He said he doesn't want to make the drive twice and then he will likely not have time as he has to prepare for the rehearsal dinner. I asked why can't the bride pick up her parents, and he said she'll be getting her hair done and won't be able to. I laughed and told him there was no way I'd take my daughter and that he'd have to figure it out. Boy, why did I say that? My daughter ran downstairs crying. Her face was red 10 minutes after my conversation with her dad, calling me terrible and accusing me of not wanting her to spend time with her dad. I told her that's not the case, and she demanded to know why I couldn't take her. I couldn't give her an answer, and she ran upstairs crying. Now I'm getting messages from his family calling me heartless and cold and a jerk for trying to ruin his special day over a relationship that is long over. My family understands my point of view, but I feel terrible that I've upset my daughter. I don't know what to do. Am I the jerk? Should I just put aside my feelings and take her? Not the jerk, but I also think your daughter is old enough to know the truth about her father. Otherwise, you will be the bad guy going forward. Not the jerk. The people he needs to pick up can get a taxi. His first responsibility should be his daughter, if he actually wants her there. And I think it might be time to tell your daughter a bit more about what happened. She's a teenager now and needs to be learning lessons about loyalty and managing relationships responsibly. Her getting the impression that this situation is all right and that you're wrong for not being happy that the ex-husband who cheated on you is getting remarried is not a good place for her to start when it comes to learning how to expect good treatment from future partners. If he thinks picking up his future in-laws is more important than picking up his own daughter, then he's very, very wrong. The adult in-laws can manage a variety of transportation options. A young teenager can't. He's showing his priorities, and it isn't his daughter, and you need to be prepared to help protect her and guide her as he continues into the future, wanting to play happy family and have his daughter go along with it while he puts her in second place to his new family. Not the jerk, but 14 is old enough to understand cheating. I would tell darling daughter that while I love her, and I love that she has a good relationship with her dad and her future stepmom, I can't handle seeing their wedding when they started dating while dad and I were still married. Then I would ask her if she has any idea as to how she can be at the wedding without me having to see it. Sometimes teenagers are incredible out-of-the-box thinkers. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or is her ex-husband? Please let us know. He's showing where his priorities lie, bruh. You should be putting your daughter first, my dude. My Karen girlfriend is demanding that I marry her. I'm 30, male. I've been with my girlfriend, who's also 30, for a year and a half. We live together in a house that I bought alone. Honestly, she's an amazing person. She's extremely caring, thoughtful, and beautiful. However, we see life very, very differently. With money, for instance, I make more than double her income, and because of this, I pay the vast majority of the bills, which I'm honestly fine with. She helps out with groceries and some bills, and it works. The problem is that she has lots of disposable income, and she treats it as such. She never has money for the things that she needs. Her car has problems. She needs to borrow money from me. She wants to go on vacation. She racks up massive credit card bills. She generally owes me between $1,000 and $4,000 at any given time, and when she starts paying me back, she inevitably needs to borrow more at some point. She literally spends it all on useless crap, constantly replacing our dishes, for example. She's extremely difficult to communicate with and reacts very harshly to things that make no sense to me. For example, I was engaged before we got together. She knew this. I've had junk mail show up with my ex's name on it, and I got absolutely blasted from her. She threatens to pack up and leave because of things like this, and I don't think I have control over them. And she will not explain why she gets so mad about it. Lots of things like this have been building up. Recently, the straw that broke the camel's back and destroyed my spark for her happened. She talked about marriage, having kids, etc. I asked her why she wants to get married, and she said, because she wants to throw a party. This seemed wildly inappropriate and a weak reason to make such a strong commitment. So I told her I'm not ready to marry her because of the reasons above, and similar things that aren't mentioned for length purposes. She lost her mind, cried, said she was going to pick up, said that things are not salvageable, then changed her mind and wants to work it out now. Am I the jerk? Why are there so many posts like this? OP, I love my partner. They're the most amazing, kind, caring, wonderful person ever. Also OP, they financially and emotionally mistreat me constantly. They stomp my reasonable boundaries and punish me for complete non-issues or just being myself. They tend to out themselves as being irrationally jealous and controlling, selfish, unstable, and constitutionally unempathetic during any sort of hard discussion. There's no way to communicate with them at all when they're upset. Why would you stay with this person if they treat you as you describe, let alone ask if you're the jerk for not marrying them on a whim? The reason she saw a wedding as just a party shows that she doesn't think of you as a person she wants to commit to and build a life with. She thinks of you as someone who is never going to leave her anyway and is great for funding a lavish party. She clearly was trying to manipulate you. Then when it didn't seem to be getting the results she wanted, switch tactics. She knows what she has in you, and of course doesn't want to leave the very cushy life that you give her. At least not until she's locked down what she thinks would be a better prospect. My brother proposed to my fiancé, his ex, and I'm ticked off. I'm 28, male. My brother, Mark, who's also 26, used to date my fiancé, Jen, who's 26, a year ago. For context, they dated back in August of 2022. They were only together for a month before he broke things off with her because he was bored of being in a relationship and never really wanted to settle down anyway. At the time they were dating, I was in a different state, so I had no idea he even had a girlfriend, and I had no idea who Jen was until I met her. Jen and I met at a bar when I moved back in October, and we hit it off really well. She was easily the most beautiful and intelligent woman I've ever met, and we met up a few times before we made it official. Fast forward to December, I finally bring her up to my family and suggest they meet her at Christmas. They knew that I was in a relationship, but I'm not the most open about my personal life, so I kept details about her to a minimum until I knew how serious we really were. My parents asked to see pictures, and they started passing my phone around the dinner table. Mark saw it, and he blew up, calling me a bad brother for dating his ex-girlfriend, and he demanded that I break it off with her. I refused. When I asked Jen about it, she confirmed they dated and gave me the details about their breakup. It took a few weeks, but eventually Mark stopped bringing up me dating his ex, and I thought he was over it. On Jen's birthday this year, I took her out to a fancy dinner with both of our families and her closest friends, and I asked her to marry me. Mark flipped once again and blew up about me proposing to her, which I and my sisters immediately shut down. The incident happened this past weekend. Mark has been pretty quiet about the whole thing for the last 2 months. I didn't see him much and figured he went low contact with me, which I had no problem with. Then he invited me and Jen for a family dinner at his apartment with my parents and sisters. I thought it was weird, but my parents and sisters were also going, so we agreed to go. The dinner was nice, nothing too fancy, and we moved to the living room to talk. After 30 minutes into normal conversation, Mark stood up and told us he had an announcement. He made a long speech about being happy to have his family around for his big moment. Then he got on one knee and pulled out this cheap ring while asking Jen to marry him. Jen was confused and obviously uncomfortable and demanded that he put it away and stand up. My dad tried to make a grab for Mark, but I got to him first and I bopped him. I won't repeat most of what was said, mostly because I was too angry to even listen to most of it. But he said something along the lines of wanting to show me that Jen wasn't really into me and just wanted to get back at him. Before it could get worse, my parents rushed me out and promised to talk to him. It's been a few days since it happened, and I'm still ticked off. I don't know what to do at this point. I'm scared Jen might have second thoughts marrying me because of this. Any advice? I want to clarify a few things that I saw in the comments. 1. Jen and I are newly engaged. It was one of those feelings where we both knew we were in it for the long run. As far as it is, I'm sure about her. 2. When we met, I was the one who approached her, not the other way around. Whether she knew or had suspicions of us being related, I don't know. I asked after finding out they dated, and she says she had no idea. I didn't have a reason to doubt that, but I can admit this seemingly overreaction on Mark's part does raise red flags. 3. I had no idea she and Mark dated when I met her. Mark and I aren't close at all. We used to be, but as we grew up, we drifted apart and talked less and less. Before I moved back, we didn't really speak much aside from special days like his or my birthday. Jen knew of my family, but not much until I decided I was ready to introduce them to her. When she and Mark met again, I didn't get a sense of any residual feelings on either part. She didn't treat him like a stranger, but she also wasn't overly affectionate with him either. I was told this was a relationship that lasted a month. I didn't think I needed permission from Mark to ask her to marry me, but maybe that was wrong of me. I'm not sure. That being said, I plan to talk to Mark this weekend to lay everything out on the table and figure out what's up. I never asked for his side of their relationship, which is my fault for not doing my due diligence. If anything major or enlightening happens, I'll update, but for now, that's all I have. Update. I called Mark and asked him to meet up with me at my place to talk. I told him I would prefer Jen to be around for the talk as well, but I was cool with it if he didn't want her there. He agreed to talk to the both of us and showed up at my place around noon today. It was pretty quiet for a few minutes before I started the conversation. I apologized for not warning him I would be proposing to Jen, and I apologized for hitting him. He said it was whatever, but he appreciated the apology. I told him what Jen had said about the relationship and breakup when I asked her about it, and I asked him to confirm if that was true. I pretty much said that his reaction throughout the whole thing has been extreme, and I wanted to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding their relationship or downplaying how serious they were. He confirmed that they only dated for a few weeks, and he broke up with her because he lost interest. Jen asked if he was acting like this because he still had feelings or regrets about ending things with her. He said he could admit he thought she was more attractive than when he last saw her, but there weren't any feelings or regrets. He said he just didn't like seeing a girl he dated, even if it was short-term, with his older brother, and as a man, I shouldn't have violated him by pursuing things with his ex. I reminded him that I had no idea they dated, so it wasn't like I consciously did this knowing their history together. He shrugged me off and said it didn't matter. I still should have broken it off. He was adamant that if the roles were reversed, he would have done the same thing, which I doubt. I asked him why he proposed to her if he didn't have any lingering feelings. Basically, to sum it up, he was talking about it to one of his buddies who was around when Mark and Jen dated, and the guy put the idea in his head that maybe Jen knew from the start that we were related and was doing this to get back at him, considering Jen had been hung up on him after they ended it. He and his friend thought it would be a good idea to test it and see if they were right, so he came up with the idea to propose and see if she would dump me for him. Jen asked him to elaborate on why he thought she was hung up on him, and he told her that he had heard she was asking about him following the breakup and still hanging out at the places they used to go, so it was a valid assumption. Then for her to pop up randomly with his brother affirmed his suspicions. Jen told him she had only asked about him once following the breakup, and she had been hanging out at those places with friends before they started dating, and she wouldn't avoid them because of a breakup. She also told him she was offended at the idea that she would go as low as to pursue me just to get back at him. He shrugged and gave her a weak apology, but said that she had to see it from his point of view. He asked her if she really didn't know, and she told him that she didn't see the resemblance in us until we were in the same room, and we act nothing alike, so it never crossed her mind, and he said okay. That pretty much wrapped up the conversation. He did tell me before he left that I could take back his invite to the wedding because he can't bring himself to support our relationship knowing he used to date her. I told him he didn't have to worry about that as he was most likely not going to be invited anyway. It's been a few hours since our talk, and I do feel better. My parents aren't too happy about him being uninvited, but they understand that it was a mutual decision and probably for the best. My sisters told me they knew he didn't have a good reason for being a jerk, and they don't blame me for not wanting him at the wedding. As of now, I'm going to limit contact with Mark, and I doubt he'll reach out to me anytime soon either. PSA: It doesn't matter how sure you are about her. Dating for only a year before proposing is a really stupid idea. You're still in the honeymoon phase. Real talk is you don't become fully comfortable and 100% guards down and cards on the table until about 3 years into the relationship. 2 max. Am I the jerk for refusing to cook separate meals for my niece? I, female 42, live with my husband, male 45, and our daughters who are 18 and 16. We live in a different city from our families due to work. A few months ago, my sister asked me if her daughter, Kate, who's 19, can stay with us since she was starting college in our city. She was scared of her daughter moving away for a first time, especially to a big city like ours. I knew Kate from before lockdown times and remembered her to be a smart and sweet kid. I discussed it with my husband and we agreed that she can stay with us. Kate moved in around 2 months back. She was fine, came home on time, let us know her whereabouts, and no partying. The issue was with food. She had turned vegan. Normally I cook for my family. I cook just one meal for all, and we are all dairy-obsessed people. Milk for cereal, butter and pancakes, cheese and everything, eggs were our staple. Kate needed separate dishes altogether, and we needed vegan substitutes for her. Since those are way more expensive, I told my sister she should give money to Kate so she can buy it. She started telling me how family doesn't take money from family to feed kids. I told her I would feed Kate the same as my other kids, but I won't spend excess money on her. She said that's fine. Since her mom won't buy it, Kate started buying plant-based substitutes with her pocket money. For dishes like pancakes, I made food for her using her ingredients. But every time I made a huge non-vegan meal, she expected me to provide equivalent vegan meals. I drew the line at that. I can't spend so much time cooking another meal. She said everyone else got to eat while she wasn't left with anything to eat. I told her she's free to cook for herself and she hates that idea. It came to a boiling point last weekend when we had a barbecue dinner with friends. She got upset that her salad was very basic. It was good, only with chicken added, and had nothing else to eat. She complained, and I told her that she can go cook for herself. She got even more upset at that and called her mom crying about how I didn't make any good meals for her and expected her to fend for herself. My sister called me yelling at me how I didn't love her daughter and was intentionally excluding her. My parents are also taking their side. Am I the jerk? Did she turn vegan before or after moving in with you? If she was vegan before, did her mother cook her meals? Did she pay for vegan substitutes for her own daughter? I'm just trying to figure out why a 19-year-old adult still feels entitled and expects people to cook lavish meals for her with their own time and money. Not the jerk. OP. She was vegan before she moved in, though my sister didn't tell me that. Her mother bought and cooked vegan dishes for her. Then why doesn't her mother give her the money that would have been used to purchase her food? She was already spending it before her daughter left home, so it wouldn't make a big difference in her income. Why is it that you're family, so you have to cover it so she can keep her own money? OP. The age-old principle of she's staying under my roof, so I should provide for her. Not the jerk. If they could send her to a dorm, they would have to pay for her food as well. It was not good enough that you opened your home to her, but you had to cater also? Not sure which aspect of your family is more entitled, your niece, your sister, or your parents. None of them want to spend a dime, but expect your house to be like a resort for her that you don't get paid or tipped for. Maybe the best approach is telling them the housing situation isn't working out. There will be more howling until they realize there is no alternative that will cost them less. For some, everything is never enough. Am I the jerk for wanting to leave my boyfriend of 6 years, knowing he may be proposing soon? I, 23 female, have been dating my boyfriend, 25 male, for almost 6 years. My boyfriend and I started dating my freshman year in college in 2017. Everything was going really well, and everything just sort of fell into place. It just felt right. Until the lockdown hit in 2020, and we all got sent home to finish college virtually during my senior year. We've been in a long-distance relationship since then, because I then began attending graduate school for speech therapy. To save money, I lived with my parents, and he lived with his, who lived 3 hours away from me. When the long distance began, my only ask of him was that we be married when I graduate in August of 2023. In our families, it's super important that we're married before we live together. He saw this as reasonable and claimed it was something he really wanted. Then we could get married and get a place together once I'm done with school. Here's the dilemma. He still hasn't proposed yet, like we had agreed. He expressed that he was planning on talking to my parents to get their blessing before planning the proposal. He initiated a conversation with my parents about next steps in November of 2022 and hasn't said anything up until last week. He's been at my house 3 times and never sought after opportunities to say anything. He's putting it off, and there's only one reason why he would. It would be one thing if he had expressed that he wasn't ready for marriage, whether that be emotionally ready or financially ready. But he's been talking a lot about engagement for the last 2 years, getting my hopes up, and then nothing happens. One important thing to note is that he's an only child with a mom who has a meltdown when the idea of marriage or moving out of town is even considered. She's been an issue throughout our entire relationship because she's constantly trying to create division between us, whether that's talking crap about him to me or vice versa. He has now begun expressing fears of leaving his parents when he is the only one there to take care of them, and he's afraid of what they'll think of him if he leaves for a career opportunity or for me, who is seeking career opportunities in speech therapy in various locations. On to his conversation with my parents, which is the biggest concern I'm having. First, he told my parents he was planning on proposing this summer. He then expressed that he was afraid of commitment and sacrifice. My dad asked him what he meant, to which he responded, "Well, I like my me time and my space to play video games and watch sporting events, which my parents give me. I'm scared to give that up for a wife or to help with kids." This kind of broke me because he would have never said anything like this before moving back home with his parents. He's extremely comfortable with his life and doesn't want to change it. But I want to change mine. I want to move out and get an amazing speech therapy career opportunity when August rolls around. I want to get married and have kids. This was something I had wanted to do with him, but with his unsupportive parents and some of the concerns he's expressing to everyone but me, I'm really scared to proceed with him and include him in things such as apartment or job hunting. Things haven't been the same as they were before we started long distance for a long time. I've been trying to remain optimistic through all of this in case things do go back to the way they were once we get a place together. But the optimism is fading. I thought I could have the best of both worlds, the career and the guy, but I'm stuck at a crossroads instead, and I'm incredibly stressed and heartbroken. This is supposed to be an exciting time, but it's just dreadful because of all of this. Any thoughts? Please be brutally honest, especially if I could have proceeded differently with this. Edit. The main issue is that he hasn't proposed. If he had concerns about a marriage or wasn't ready, he needs to tell me. But he either hasn't told me, or whenever I've asked, he brushes it off and says he wants to marry me. The main issue is his consistency. He says one thing, but doesn't demonstrate it through actions. I've had conversations with him about this, and he just says he'll try to do better. As far as the video games and sports go, I really try not to be nitpicky or controlling about what he does in his spare time or how much of it he does. I've been gaslit and hurt in previous relationships for being too controlling, so I try to be extra conscientious of that. I'm supportive of him hanging out with the boys, try to get to know them as well. Although these things aren't my go-tos, I try to watch sporting events with him and play video games with him to try to understand the hype. Update. Holy cow, y'all. It took me 4 months, but I did it. I ended it. Over the last 4 months, all our relationship has been is just talks of either marriage, engagement, or taking me out on a date, when he never actually does the things he says he'll do. Whenever I wanted to have a conversation about serious stuff, like where to live, finances, having kids, etc., he brushed it off like it was nothing. This was how I knew he was not planning for the future. Apparently, his parents know more about his financial situation than I do. I approached them about it, and they showed me how many loans he has. It was astronomical, and he hasn't paid a dime since he graduated from college 4 years ago. And he has 0 expenses, nothing. This made me upset, because not only did I have expenses, but I was working insane hours to pay for school and for my expenses. And he didn't make any attempts to have a stable, consistent job over the summer. At that point, I was done. It took a lot of courage to leave, especially considering the problems I have with his mom. I thought she'd go off on me for dumping her baby, but I finally did it this past weekend. Darn, did I dodge a bullet. The whole conversation was horrible. I felt like I was witnessing a toddler throwing a tantrum. He was crying, pacing, throwing stuff that I bought him, etc. He accused me of cheating when I told him the long-distance thing was affecting my feelings for him. He tried to bribe me with stuff to stay with him, like a Nintendo Switch. He guilted me for all the dates he took me on over the summer and in college years ago. Keep in mind, I was paying for undergrad and graduate school out of pocket and had no money. He accused me of never wanting him to be happy. The worst part, when I told his mom we broke up, it was essentially a "don't let the door hit you on the way out" kind of thing. She basically said, "Sorry y'all broke up. Have a good life. Sayonara, Sammy." To be honest, I was hoping she'd yell at me or go off on me, just so I could see her stick up for him a little bit. Just to show me that she truly cares about his well-being and not just her own for whenever he decided to leave her. I'm sad and extremely anxious because I left something that was comfortable and don't know what the future brings. I hated hurting him, but he has also inflicted a lot of pain and doubts into my mind. My fiancé only realized that he couldn't find his passport the night before our honeymoon, and now we can't go. Context: a family member gifted this trip to us for our wedding. It's the only nice thing we're doing for the occasion because otherwise we're going to just go to the city hall and have dinner with family. After this year's ongoing strike and a bad financial year before that, I've been the sole breadwinner, and while he's been very helpful around the house, it's starting to breed resentment and fear in me. I'm so nervous that this event will only be gasoline on that fire. Could you please give me some perspective, Reddit? My fiancé is so kind and we get along so well and I love him dearly, but these lapses in judgment are beginning to grind me down. This was the kind of trip that we'll never be able to afford on our own, so I'm feeling this hard. Update: thank you to those of you who called him irresponsible because you're really appealing to the anger in me right now. I wrote this post in the middle of the night as we were still looking for the passport. Hope remained that we might find it, but we didn't. It's the weekend, so there's no chance of getting it until Monday. We called one agency and they said they no longer do day of passports after lockdown, but there's a chance we might be able to get into the federal office on Monday or Tuesday. I honestly should have gone alone, but the one detail I left out above is that his aunt and her family were also going on this trip, and I felt uncomfortable joining them without him. We'll update Reddit on whether or not I end up making it on Tuesday. I'm still really emotional, and I'm perhaps not acting too rationally right now. Update 2. After my therapy today, we continued to talk out some of the major themes of this mishap. His lack of preparation, how this ties into how hard it's been that he's not working. By the way, he does actually work and proactively looks for work. It's just that he's in a very difficult industry and there's some complexity that I won't go into. How I tend to imagine the worst possible outcome, and as many of you have pointed out, should continue to consider how making marriage work means working with each other's strengths and weaknesses. Also, want to call out that he has only traveled internationally as an adult once before, so there was a certain amount of ignorance that's forgivable on his end. Plus, we're both neurodivergent creative types, so this is the type of behavior I need to come to expect and decide if I can put up with. I think I can. I just need to be more proactive about helping him in spots where he's weak versus judging him and testing him to see if he'll succeed. Since many have asked, yes, he did apologize and admit to his role in this situation. It's all his fault. He keeps assuring me that he'll make it up to me throughout the week. His aunt emailed and told us that it all worked out in the end. She gave the room to another family member, our flight was refunded, and she assured us that she'll reschedule the trip whenever we're ready. I am, however, punishing him by forcing him to allow me unlimited reign over the TV. BBC historical miniseries are on the slate for the rest of the weekend. I'm also trying to figure out if I should go back to work later this week or take all these days off. I hate to ask this, but are you sure it's not deliberate? My mom's last husband had such terrible luck with passports, including losing it while on holiday. Once he had got his hooks in properly, he literally shredded his passport in front of her to punish her so they couldn't go on a cruise that she had planned and paid for. In the end, I went with her instead. But anyway, under normal circumstances, if this happened to someone, they'd be frantic, mortified, hugely apologetic for ruining your chance at a lovely trip. Was he any of those things? Go on your own and have a nice relaxing time. Tell him to sort himself out and start taking some responsibility in the relationship, and tell him he needs to go back to work. Am I the jerk for saying I would never have chosen my husband as the father of my baby? I, 37 female, and my husband, Liam, 30 male, have 2 kids. I'm currently pregnant with our third and last. Liam is a wonderful husband and a fantastic father. I was out at brunch with a few friends of mine. I was telling them a funny story about my cravings and how Liam had made a cake from scratch for it. A friend of a friend, Paige, said that I chose so well and that she should have put as much thought as I did into choosing him. I have a reputation for being really thorough and thinking things out before doing anything, the responsible one. I told her that I never would have chosen Liam to be the father of our first, but I am so grateful he was. I was very lucky. Our pre-marriage life was messy. I was with another man, Dave. Dave was a steady, reliable man, and we had been together for years. Dave made a new friend who was Liam, and I could not help but absolutely despise him. According to him, Liam made Dave feel young again and he was desperate to reclaim the sense of youth he lost by being responsible since he was young. He spent all of his time with Liam and other bros. Dave would spend every night out partying until 2 or 3 a.m. He spent his entire paycheck and some of my paychecks on wrestling videos and online gambling. He bought a motorcycle. He used our savings to buy crypto. He shaved his head bald. The last straw was him spending $20,000 of my savings to travel. Throughout this, Liam was incredibly disrespectful to me. Dave broke up with me when I asked him to stop hanging out with Liam and his other friends. He immediately moved in with a girl I had concerns about. I felt deeply hurt, and for the first time in my life, I felt like hurting someone in return. I was miserable, out of my mind, and called Liam over. I wanted to ruin their friendship like he ruined my relationship. He was annoyed at Dave for something else and was down for anything. I woke up the next morning realizing that I made a huge mistake, but it was incredible. Unfortunately, my bad decision caught up to me and I got pregnant. Ironic since I had always wanted to have kids, but I was told that I was infertile. Both Liam and I were against kids out of wedlock, and we had a small wedding. I was ready to grit my teeth and make the best of our marriage, but surprisingly, Liam turned out to be an incredible partner and father. If it was a mistake, it was the best mistake of my life. Paige was very offended that I said Liam wouldn't have been my choice initially. She said I was making myself superior. She said that she lost respect for me and would never talk to me again. She also messaged Liam to tell him what I said. Was what I said really that bad? Edit. I should probably be clear, but I'm a lot more unfiltered on Reddit than here. I just said that while we knew each other before, Liam was basically a one-night thing, which is true. My other friends know the truth because a few of them were there when it all unfolded. Dave was furious at first, which is understandable, but we are cordial to each other. I did not get my money back, unfortunately. Not the jerk. I'd imagine Liam feels the same. This is a wild story, but the best part is that it worked out for you guys. Lose Paige as a friend. That's a weird response she had, in my opinion. Father covers for his new wife is surprised when I cut him out of my life. Recently, I've come to learn that T, my stepmother, has only been around 8 years and whom I don't care for, stole $768 from me, 32 male. When I spoke to my father, all he could do was complain about how many problems this is causing him, the stress on his heart, and how it's damaging his relationship. He didn't apologize for what she did, he just made the phone call about himself. For a phone call that lasted an hour and a half, I probably spoke for 15 minutes or less. I told him we could talk about it when I get there and figure something out. He then suggested flat out that I can help him work to make back the money. Yes, sure, let me perform physical labor to earn the money that your wife stole from me and pocket you another $900. That sounds great. I was coming in from out of state for a different reason and already planning on staying at the house. This is my childhood home, with my room still furnished how I left it, like my clothes are still in the dresser for when I visit. Plane tickets purchased, and I send him the confirmation date. The next day, he texts me back that I'm no longer welcome at his house, that it's time I grow up and seek healthcare somewhere else, and that he just needs to know where to send the money. This throws all of my appointments into the void, and I had to cancel and rebuy plane tickets because of it, and now I'm staying with other family. I know he did it to protect my stepmother from the confrontation of facing me in person. She crumbles to dust if people raise their voices around her. For reference, this woman is in such need of therapy that I cleaned and rearranged the kitchen one morning and T started crying and claimed that I was kicking her out of the house by making it not hers. All I did was do dishes and organize and clean the spice cabinet and pantry. He keeps saying that it's for his health, that I'm not there, and that it's too much stress. I have my own money and transportation and provide my own food. The duration of the trip was 2 weeks. I block him and my stepmother on everything. I ask my family to no longer speak to my dad about me. This is all after a lifetime of mistreatment and narcissistic BS from my dad. Now I hear through the grapevine that he's shocked, just couldn't believe I'd do this to him. My sibling already no longer speaks to him because of similar things, and him telling my brother to grow up and quit being a wimp after my sibling set a boundary with him. I had warned him before that if he kept up in his ways, he'd have no one to take care of him when he's older, and he didn't listen. If that wasn't enough, my late mom's last words to him were, "Don't let the family fall apart." Way to go, Dad. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.